All right, what uh-oh. I
Shh.
fucked up the cameras.
Uh-oh.
Did you
Shalom.
guys move or something? Did we add another person to the chat? Oh, I know what I did. There we go.
This wouldn't be our D&D
Too late.
stream if
I
there weren't
already
fuck
fixed it.
ups. God damn it.
Good job. Good work, Branson.
Thank you. Somebody
Well,
supports me.
Lord knows that there's going to be more issues.
Joel's always talking behind your back.
I know, he's such a diva. He loves drama. Hey, what's up, everybody? We are not doing the normal campaign this week because Andrew's got to work. So you can blame him for that. So I was thinking, well, what do we want to do? And, running with the two-person party would have been an idea. And probably I would have done that normally. But it's also just such a small party that it changes the dynamic a lot. So I thought, well, we get a lot of questions with this stuff. And I never answer them because I don't read the chat. So I thought, well, we'll do a quick one where we do some tips on the people. I hear a lot of people that are always just mewling and whining, and they're like, "Hey, I want to learn how to play D&D, but I don't know how." And I always ignore them. So now I'm not going to ignore them. I got a bunch of questions from the Discord we're going to go through later. But me and Joel fucked around and we made a PowerPoint.
Oki helped. Don't leave him out.
Oh,
Don't throw him
okay.
underneath the
Did you
bus.
help with the PowerPoint?
Yeah,
I
he
did.
helped
I
with
did like.
it.
What do you
I did.
do on it?
He posted
I
some
did
cool
some.
pictures and wrote some things. Damn.
Oh.
I did the DM advice slides. A couple
Oh,
of those.
okay.
I didn't do as much as you guys.
Whatever. Whatever.
So-
It doesn't matter. We got it all set, and we're gonna go do a quick run through of it.
Can we get start before we get started? Can I show off my new my thing?
You're
Not a
just
new
gonna
thing.
fucking do it anyway, so just do it. It's not a new thing. You've had that thing.
I didn't say it was a new thing. Just my thing. It's my thing.
See, the thing about Joel is that he loves getting headaches. He loves getting headaches in the morning. That's why wine is
If
his
I wake
favorite
up,
drink.
cleary-eyed and with like a sound mind, I know something's wrong.
Joel
Don't feel
just
safe.
loves waking up with big crust all over his eyes, bright red, and he wakes up like a gasp, like they do in movies after they've been knocked out.
Yep. All right, we can get started now.
Heyo, Jaden, we have an E1 Discord. I don't remember the link, so
We can post it.
yeah, I guess I don't know. Ask Charles to do it. Text DM Charles. He's the guy. He figures that out, I guess. Right? He seems pretty on the ball. All right, so let's get to the PowerPoint. Unless Oki, do you have any business to cover?
No, I was just gonna link the Discord in the chat.
He was gonna roll a big old blunt and light it up.
Yeah, to one up you.
420.
All right.
420.
Joel, you put all the monsters over the thing.
Well, no, stop! You gotta go to no, stop!
Okay,
Stop moving shit.
How do you do it?
Just hit present.
I hit what? Present? Oh, that changes the whole formatting of it now. All right, so what now? Can I present in a different windowed mode? Like I cropped it so it would fit in the thing, Joel. Got Joel? Is Joel gone? Yeah, Joel froze. I don't know. Look at that anticipation on his face, though.
Yeah, he's really upset.
He's really, really upset that I didn't do it.
I think he left.
Did he leave?
Hey, he blocked me.
All right, whatever. We're gonna get going. I'm not letting Joel ruin this for me. He probably did it on purpose. All right, let's get some of these guys out of the way. What is this? You got the dragon over there. You got that guy. He's probably a lich. You got an owlbear. So a lot of people don't know this, but the main thing you got to realize is that the D&D in D&D stands for Dungeons and Dragons. What's up, Joel? You back?
I'm back.
D&D stands for Dungeons and Dragons. Now, the N actually stands for and, even though and doesn't start with an N. It starts with an A. But if you put D-A-D, it would say dad. And that'd be confusing to everybody, right?
I prefer the ampersand in the middle of the D and the D.
Oh, yeah, let me just reach over to hit shift
Yeah,
key.
hit shift.
Yeah, hit the shift key.
Yeah, let me just do that. Let me just waste my time doing that. If you guys got questions, we're gonna take care of the questions more at the end. So if you're asking questions now, I'm probably not gonna see them.
We'll have time at the end if you want to push some more in. That'll be fine.
Yeah.
All
right.
Let's all pay attention to the owl bear wearing elven armor. That's super fucking cool.
That is really sick. Well, I can't move it anymore. Whatever. I'm going to the next one. All right. So there's different ways to play D&D. We talk about this a lot in like how we play the game and our approach to it, and we're pretty comfortable. I honestly don't think we've changed our approach much in like the last year of how we want to play. But you got to figure out.
I would say that our style is actually like very actually humorous compared to other tables. Like I could see somebody not liking our table because it's not bit heavy as in like E1 style, but it is like a little bit relaxed and a little bit more fun, and then we all kind of trust each other to do what we want to do. But that's not the only way to play, like at all. Like, no way.
I mean, really, the only homebrew rule that we have is roll for dick size.
And death saves we do differently. But
wait, how do you normally do death saves?
You're supposed to, when you pop up, when you're healed, all death saves are erased.
Oh, okay.
We keep them on, which is way cooler.
Yeah, I like that just because if you have a bunch of... It makes you less likely to charge into the next battle. But yeah, like... I mean, I've played games where it's just everybody wants to hang out and drink. I've had games where people want to really, like, create this, like, interpersonal party drama and have a narrative and kind of push it forward. And then I've never really played this type, but I know a lot of people approach D&D this way, just, like, as dungeon crawl, grind through this...
We did do the one-shot level 20 where we all came up with like the douchiest character builds that we possibly could.
Yeah.
So that's similar, but that was a one-shot where we're just like coming up with the most ridiculous like style of character we could, which we also realized wasn't very fun.
Well, it wasn't very fun. I'm sure some... I honestly, I read the Reddit D&D to torture myself a lot, and a lot of people really like the high-level, like, super powerful stuff. And honestly, to me, the more powerful you get, there comes a certain point where it gets less and less fun because it, you know, even past like level fucking 8, it's so hard to like permanently die.
There's no real support for those like ending levels either, like in terms of modules and adventures that are.
Well, you look at the challenge rating system too, and you know most of the big bad guys that are into the game, they can be beat by a high level party pretty easily. So you really have to like. They don't have a lot of higher level content in the game just because they want you to like. They figure you'll just like make it up, you know.
We ended on like level 10 in our game, right?
Yeah.
For you suckers.
Because but I mean, even before, like when you were fighting the final boss, I think
we were 10.
Reskin Gratz. He's like a 23 challenge level, and you guys didn't have too much trouble with him. You got close, but.
Well, we can talk about like how the different tiers work in like power level, how they kind of space it in D&D where around 5, around 11, around 16 you hit pretty big power spikes.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, but basically you have to figure out how you want to play the game, what tone you want to have, and what kind of stuff you want to do, because a lot of people come in thinking like D&D is all about combat, but then you have the Critical Role kind of fans that come in and they want, you know, subterfuge and character development and like this overarching narrative with a DM who's going to give you really long, flowery lines about stuff like that. You got to figure out what works for you because you can play it any way you want. But, you know, even then, like certain stuff like shopping. I know Evan loves shopping, our buddy that we played with in Chicago. Like riddles, like there's going to be stuff that people want to do. If you're the DM, you got to fit it in there. But if you're the player, also seek it out, you know, and have a character that kind of goes along with what you like. Like, you're just going to have more fun that way. And you know what? I'll save that one for the player, too, about, like, people are apprehensive at the beginning. So, we always tell I think we'll start off with one of the best pieces of advice you can give to a new person is just the difference between D&D and video games.
Real quickly about that last slide, if you're very, very new to D&D, you won't know what you want or what you like. What you'll like is, I want to play D&D. And your idea about tabletop RPGing might be based on video games, like mine was for sure to begin. And then we quickly realized, like, oh, no, it's not like that. So like if you want to come in and you just like I just want to play, trust your DM. That would be my advice: is trust your DM and have fun and follow these next steps. That because this is a good, really important slide, I think.
Like I think I've played with new people, and a lot of people play it exactly like it's Skyrim, right? You're the main guy, you're running around, you do this, and none of your actions really have that much like impact on anything. And if you even most of the D&D modules are made so that everything you do kind of matters on some degree. Like there's going to be we're going to recommend Lost Mines of Phandelver as the best 1 through 5 intro campaign for everybody.
Dude, hot take, maybe that might be the best adventure module that like best complete adventure module that Wizards released, and it was in their starter pack.
You know
Like
what I
it's
think
just the
though?
most.
Every new one they release is so fucking ambitious.
And that's fine because you constantly got to spiral outwards from where you're at in the beginning. But like, it's just Lost Mines of Phandelver is really, 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 really fucking good.
Yeah.
And honestly, even I think a new DM, that's where I would start with. But beyond that, like what Branson said, you're not going to run in and be this like. It always bothered me in Skyrim that you could be head of the Fighters Guild, head of the Thieves Guild, head of the Mages Guild. Like, there's no fucking way that's happening with a good DM.
Yeah.
Oki, do you agree with that?
I think if there's like anything I would say is, I think like one thing from Skyrim that like more players and DMs could take from is like just freedom of like not being on rails, the idea that you decide to go wherever and take up something new, like within reason, obviously within the DM's kind of framework. But
So
I think a lot of DMs can kind of get hooked on their own story and the way they want their story to play out.
That last point's really good. Yeah, as much as people, and I was guilty of this the first time I DM too, which I'm sure we'll be kind of like sharing a lot of our faults like as we go on. Like, it's not your story. As much as you think if you have like a really dope story that you want to tell, like you should probably make a short story or a book because D&D is not really like well built for that. You want your players to be pushing the narrative, and to force them to push your own narrative feels shitty.
The thing is too is that if you have a twist or something that you want in your campaign, everybody ends up foreshadowing it so much because they wrote this cool twist and they want people to find out about it, and they get 7 different opportunities to find out. It's just not gonna be on come out how you want it to be in your head.
Yeah.
I think the best adventure modules I read are just kind of loose frameworks of like a series of events, and then the players kind of are the rogue element where you throw that in, they're gonna fuck everything up probably. I think we'll probably have a funner adventure because of it.
When we also say like don't play it like it's Skyrim, I think people get like there is not a lot of stuff that's explicitly clear in D&D starting off. Like if you're a rogue, you don't get taught like, okay, what are the stealth mechanics, because it's really kind of up to the DM. So people just have this kind of assumption going in that their character is going to be able to do certain things at the beginning, and it just never quite works out. Yeah. New players love
blocker, it doesn't come up and they get upset.
Well, it's like a new DM and a new player are going to think completely different, because a new DM is going to be, say, the party's on the road and here comes a merchant and he wants to talk to you guys. And to the DM, the merchant has this backstory. He probably has some like kind of quest that they could help out if they want. And the new player is just going to fucking kill the merchant. That's going to fucking happen. And you will never see it coming as a DM, but if you think like a new player, that's just like, oh, they have all this cool stuff, I'm going to get a really good start on it, and just kind of go.
Yeah, and then the thing is, the new player will think like, oh, they definitely have a badass magical sword on them. Like the fucking dipshit merchant walking down the dust road. Like there's 0% chance of that. Well, there's not 0% chance, but you know, it's like very unlikely. Like you'll probably, if you're lucky, find a potion of healing that'll give you maximum of
and then the advice on all that is like, okay, well then if your players do that, you got to punish your players by having and then it's just not fun. Mm-hmm. So half the time you just don't be afraid. Also, if
cycle of punishing your players,
if you're starting a new one, don't be afraid to walk something back. I mean, we've done a couple retcons on like simple stuff, but don't be afraid to dial some stuff. Okay, well, yeah, let's not kill this guy right off the bat. And you know, we're kind of we'll go ahead and move forward into advice for players, because that'll kind of play into that as it goes
Yeah.
on too. All right. So they constantly talk about this in D&D, the 3 pillars of D&D. Where'd you find these pictures, Joel? Are these in the
I
thing?
made them.
You drew them?
I made them. Yeah, I drew them. I'm a teacher. This is what I do. I make PowerPoints.
Nice. All right. So social interactions, combat, and exploration, right? Social interactions are pretty easy. You go into a village. Oh, there's a tavern. Oh, there's a lord here. He's got an estate. Maybe he wants to talk to you. Oh, let's go over here. Oh, there's this mysterious wizard. We don't know what his deal is. And we
I
find...
think even like social interactions could be like, okay, we run into like a white or a ghost in a tomb.
Yeah.
You know, before it's not combat immediately. It might be, but you
Yeah.
might be able to get past this really difficult fight, especially at low level, with a social interaction if you're smart about it. So it's a fun type of thing to look at all 3 of these as almost like a Venn diagram. I probably should have done it that way because there's a lot of overlap.
You should have worked harder on it. Yeah.
I should have worked harder.
And then
I like how the colors are different colors, so you know they're different ones.
and there's combat, right? Which everybody knows what that is. You're just slugging it out. You're going in a dungeon, or you're getting in a bar fight, or you're doing something. And then exploration, which is probably the least used of all 3, right?
I would think that it's actually equally as used. It just gets the least amount of tension from the DM.
Yeah, even in the player's handbooks or the DM's guide, there's very little mechanics that they put out there for exploration.
But I don't think it's a mechanic-heavy pillar. For me, it's like, all right, well, how did you design your dungeon? The layout, the way the players go through it, that's part of exploration. Yeah. It's just a very nebulous. It's sort of like the glue that kind of fills in all the other cracks to me. Like, that is all exploration. Going into a new town and seeing it, that's exploration. It's not always like rolling for survival like people think.
And you know, they kind of balance a lot of the classes around these. You'll see, you know, a champion fighter will almost all have things that deal with combat. All their abilities, all their special class abilities they get. Whereas a ranger is going to have stuff that focuses more on exploration. And even like certain subclasses that you wouldn't expect, like the samurai has a bonus to charisma and stuff like that. So they have stuff built in to kind of help you excel at each one, but you know, it's kind of up to you and how you build your character, because you can take any class and make them good at almost anything if you want to focus on it. All right, so you want to play D&D. You figured out somewhat of the basics. You have people that want to play with you, which is probably just the hardest part. You're going to go to a session 0, right? So for those that don't know, a session 0 is where a new campaign's about to start. The DM has something in mind for it, and then he brings in the players he wants to play with it. And before you guys even make your characters, before you actually like draw out the stats and do all this stuff, it's a really good idea to have a session 0, because a lot of people come into D&D, especially if they haven't played with you before, with a lot of expectations, and there is so much catty, arguing, petty stuff in D&D. Like, there's so many table arguments, there's so many like passive aggressive slights and things like that.
If I could jump in real quickly, I think like me and Branson started at the same table, what, 3.5, 4 years ago, Branson, something like that. And so like we had a really tumultuous first table that had a lot of people. They'll come up more and more. It became an amazing table. Like I still play at that table, and I still play with the same people, and like Branson still joins when he comes into town. But like it was very much like what he's saying. It was catty. There was like all these like backstabby type of things. There was all this like, what about my character? What about you know? It was difficult, and I was guilty of that. Branson was guilty of that. We were all guilty of it, but we worked through it. So like when we bring this up, we're not just reading it from Reddit posts or whatever. Like we experienced it to where like people like almost gotten not in fights but nearly, you know.
Yeah, because D&D is really fun, and people that like it take it seriously, and then it gets the whole thing. But basically, the best way to avoid that is discuss table home rules. Can you use this, you know, subclass that's in an unearthed arcana, so it's not official, but they made it, so it's kind of. Can you know, if I have a guy that's going to be like my character, he hates you know, guys who worship a certain god, and then you're going to have another guy who wants to make a cleric of that god, right? That's just not going to work. It's not interesting type of melodrama because it would never like partner up. So figure out a way to make like a group that meshes. The first kind of specific area I have here is about an inter-party conflict because a lot of people really like it and some people don't like it. An inter-party conflict is going to be, let's say you have a rogue that kind of steals documents from the party if he doesn't want them to know about it and only he wants to know about it. You know, it rarely gets to the point where just player characters are just attacking each other, but people will have stuff like, okay, well, I want more power, so I'm going to take this, and then your guy thinks we should save, you know, the orphan girl. My guy thinks she's weak and we should kill her. And how are we going to solve this? A lot of people really think that's interesting, but the problem I see with it is most people that do it aren't interested in character development. They just want to have like a shithead character that just gets his way.
Well, which is funny because the last time, yeah, go ahead, Oki, because I was gonna ask you. Like, I had a shithead character when you were the DM, and I felt like you.
Yeah, it worked out because mainly I would set up conflicts for you guys, and I think you guys liked that, and I wasn't too worried about it like kind of boiling over into actual arguments. I think we were all pretty level-headed. But like, yeah, you had a character that was just kind of very selfish and self-centered and shithead and like wanted everything to go their way. But like the other characters kind of balanced it out.
But it was even different because Joel's character didn't prevent any of the other characters from getting what they wanted or doing what they wanted, right?
Yeah,
so he wasn't stepping on anyone's toes. A really bad inter-party conflict will be like, well, my guy wants to do this, and he is forbidden by the paladin from doing this. And at that point, you're just making other people have less autonomy, which usually is pretty fucking annoying rather than, like, interesting. And Joel, I'm going to let you handle this next one, this next word.
Verisimilitude?
Yeah, because I didn't write that. Joel wrote that. I had to look it up.
Yeah, verisimilitude is a douchey word that I really like, but it's really useful, I think, with like D&D and fictional worlds. What it means is like truthiness, like the level of realism to it, like how real is it? Is this abstraction of reality that is like rolling dice and looking at mathematical equations on your character sheet, is it actually very close to what the real world thing is or not? And my thing is like, just chill out about that. For the most part, like, no, of course not. You're rolling dice and adding numbers and talking to each other and drinking beer at a table. Like, you don't have to worry too much about, like, well, I don't know if your guy would be able to find cacti in the desert to eat. Like, at a certain point, I think that, like, the realism almost takes away from the fun.
I've
like,
never had, like, you got to eat a certain amount and drink water. I've never found that to be like an interesting mechanic, like the survival mechanics.
I think it can be. I just don't think you have to go
like,
too far with it.
Yeah.
You know, like if you want to get gritty survival, like remember in the late 2010s, even like everything was gritty and like had to be like a gritty reboot and realistic.
Cool. It was Wolverine. He had the claws.
It was cool for a second. It's just like at a certain point, we're playing D&D, and I'm going to say this multiple times. Like you're playing a fucking adventure tabletop game called Dungeons and Dragons. So don't worry about what is realistic and what is not. At a certain point, you have to let go. That's why I brought that up. I think it's cool to think about that, but don't let it dictate your entire table's play or your creation of that world as a DM.
A lot of people do the gritty realism for long rest and short rest too, which means that if you want to like heal completely, you have to like rest for a week straight, which doesn't seem interesting to me.
It depends on it's going to dictate the pace of your game. If you want like a type of game where like they'll adventure once and then
it's like professional football. You need a week off after you go.
Somebody brought up Fallout with this word, and I think Fallout New Vegas is a good example. Like Fallout New Vegas has these moments where it's very realistic, and there's fucking ghouls who create like societies because radiation. That's fucking cool. Like, let that go. Don't worry about explaining how ghouls exist at that point. Like, that shit is neat. So don't get too far down into the details and worry about verisimilitude too much.
All right. The next one would be difficulty. Just because everybody has their different idea about what is difficult and what isn't. And I would say if you're a first-time player, I would not have it be high difficulty. I would say new DMs also don't know what a party can kind of handle and what it can't handle. So
Yeah.
people will have an idea of how they want to play the game where it's like, I want players to die. It makes it more dramatic. It makes it more cool. But with new players who really, honestly, even though it's a pretty simple game, it takes a while to realize how to play a character, like, well. Even for the most simple stuff about when should I duck out, when should I not. So you can challenge people who've played the game a little bit more than you can new people. With new people, I mean, I like the idea of death being an option, but I wouldn't even, if you're doing a 1 through 5, I wouldn't even have it be that hard. I would have it enough to be dramatic, but
5e, it's hard enough to kill somebody in 5e. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think like if somebody, if the rolls happen the way they happen, I would recommend don't like go by the rolls. Like at that
Yeah,
point, like
don't-
if you roll and somebody dies, like if you then back up and like veto that and say it didn't happen that way, everyone's gonna kind of check out a little bit. At that point, it's not too much of a game.
if you
anymore.
kill somebody, I don't think you should do the, and then the guy in the magic carpet comes and scoops him up and takes him to God knows where to fix him.
We'll talk about death in just a second.
Yeah.
That'll come up because it is a very like tumultuous kind of subject. But I think like difficulty is something that to talk about. Like what kind of like asking what kind of video games people like. If somebody immediately comes out and says like Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, fucking kill them. They'll be fine with it. If someone comes out and says Mario, Zelda, like maybe they don't want that level of difficulty. Like asking what kind of movies and games and books people like will give you a lot of insight into like the level of difficulty they appreciate.
Yeah, and just let people learn their character. It's going to take a minute. So if you're new, there's a whole, I think
give them some easy ones to kind of figure it out.
We had some close calls in our first campaign, but nobody died until what?
Well, I knocked Joel out in the first fight. Like, I get.
Oh no, I'm talking about me and Joel in Chicago, the very ever first time we played.
We had a character who attacked another character, a PC who attacked another PC, and she got kicked out of the party. Not out of the table, but that character got sent packing. But we had a couple the thing is it's all about sweat. You want a certain amount of sweat. So like Oki said, like 5e is hard to get killed. So, if you get knocked out, like I don't know, people who watched the last stream when Malachi was out, I was sweating for sure. Like I
Me too.
was sweating, and that's all you need is like a little bit of sweat. And that's a good job as a DM. A DM should be patting themselves on the back when they knock somebody out. Now, do they kill them? That we'll talk about that in a minute because that's totally different.
Try not to knock anyone out in one hit unless it's like a crit too. Then you might have overestimated your monster.
You've probably made a
unless
mistake.
somebody makes a glass cannon, then you can do whatever you want.
That'd be badass though. That'd be pretty cool.
Uh-oh, I lost Joel's camera. Whoopsie daisy.
Is that on me?
No, it's on me. I'm gonna go to the next slide. You read it while I edit it.
Okay. Dealing with death. Death is something that I think, the difficulty of any sort of game, needs to be high enough to where it's interesting, but not low enough to where it's, obviously, or not so high that it's just completely impossible. So the idea of death being a reality in D&D is should be there and should be present, I think. And understanding that your players probably put a lot of work into their character, especially if they're new. Like I put way too much work in my first couple of characters because I didn't know better. And then one of them did die.
5e kind of makes that apparent. Like you should be doing that almost for new players. There's so many character customization things that people get.
There's also going to be some people that are very, very upset when they lose a character. Not really much you can do about it, but
it depends on the type of game. Like I'm playing a Lamentations game, which is based off OSR. In those games, death is more common, but you're also not expected to figure out your backstory right away. Like you make a character and they're kind of disposable until they start gaining levels, and then they're going to be that's when players start getting invested in their characters
But
after a few levels.
it becomes easier too if, as a DM, you let the death mean something. Like if you're fighting some pointless goblins and you die, there's not much you can do. But if it is a major instance, if it is a pivotal plot moment or something, you can let that character go out in a way that has some like oomph to it.
Yeah.
Because it's a big thing when somebody dies. It should be, if you're doing like a creative story, like the other players should remember them. Depending on how long it's gone, it's going to be natural or not. But you should let them do something cool.
So the two examples I want to bring up are, and Oki, I want you to take the second half of this because I think you handled 2 PC deaths within 3 sessions really well. And it was Andrew both times, which makes it way more brutal. But the time I lost my character, like me and this other person were just doing this ribbon sort of like leveling up type of thing. And by ribbon, I mean like it was purely for flavor. And then they rolled really high on an encounter chart. And the DM, who I won't name, was clearly like not ready to kill a character. Like they were not ready, and it was just a very lame encounter that didn't need to happen. And then I just lost my character. I got resurrected because it was such a lame way to go out. Like it meant nothing in the grand scheme of things. Whereas Oki, I felt like both times Andrew handled it well. It meant something, and something came of it, and you made something of it. If you want to talk about that,
What I was going to suggest for DMs is think like before it happens. Think about what happens like in the character's afterlife. Because in D&D, like most settings, like there is a literal afterlife. So you should be thinking about like what's going to happen. What do they see when they die? Where do they go? What's happening to them?
And also, as a player, just don't write a fucking 4-page backstory for your stupid little character, because there is a chance he could just get smoked.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, there is just a chance he could get smoked.
I had Andrew die, like his first D&D character that he made. I killed him it was a battle with goblins, but
it was a serious battle. There was a lot of them.
It was the kind of thing where you were all debating beforehand, like how you want to go about it. And Andrew suggested to talk to the goblins, and you all made fun of him. And he unsheathed his sword and just went out and started slaughtering goblins. And eventually, you guys took out like almost all of them. But then the last boss, I believe his name was Slave Whipper Piss. And it was a bugbear. He mauled Andrew's character, and then at the same time, Joel's character got shot by an arrow.
Oh, so yeah, I remember that.
2 people unconscious, and Branson was in the middle, and you had to choose like which one.
They both had 2 death saving throws after I killed the guy.
Yeah, and I think Andrew was successful in a couple, so you went after Joel, who had like only 1 left.
Did he crit 1 on that one? Was that a crit 1 death? Yeah.
And then, as you ran back to Andrew, he crit 1 on his death saving throw.
Yeah.
And it's like, if I were to back that up and say it didn't happen, like that sucks. Like that. Yeah. That's the coolest.
But the cool thing was you still made something of that death, and it came about naturally, which is decide. And it was a very awkward thing because like you went for Karai, the shittier character. You know, and we could say it's mechanical because they were the white mage as well, but it was still interesting. That's the thing. Something interesting happened because of it. And then we met them for later on, which made it even better. Like he was still part of the story. You didn't forget about him. And then like the second death, that was even
Yeah, because then he made his second character and he was alive for a session.
Well, his second character was also insanely fragile. He was like a level 5 sorcerer that had a flat 0 in con and just got smoked.
He dumped Constitution. I think he had an 8 in Constitution.
Yeah, he got a one shot because it was the double. The guy did double his total health damage.
Well, so it was like an adult white dragon. So
well, you guys had did a thing that I didn't expect, which was to immediately get captured by the Eladrin.
Why would we not be captured by such
We're not going over that again.
It was an honor for us to be captured by the Eladrin.
You guys got dumped into a fighting pit and had to fight a dragon, and that's where
you want to play D&D. And you're a player. You got a DM. Maybe he's experienced, maybe not. Let's do some tips for players, huh? Let's get some shit out of the way, huh? Is that the only thing on this slide, or does this one animate? I can't.
Well, they all animated, but you can't do it when you're doing it in the.
Yeah,
But
because
it's not in the present mode. I didn't know you were going to be.
I don't know how to crop. It's a full screen when it's in the present
It's
mode. I
okay.
can't
Just
crop
go to
it.
the next slide.
All right. This is a really cool guy. This is Joel's character.
That's not true. I
It's-
wish I had the balls to make that character. I do not. Somebody make this character.
What class would that be? Sorcerer?
Bard.
Oh, yeah.
Everything that like looks like that's a fucking bard.
I think that like everyone that scolds people on Twitter, that's what their character would look like if they made a D&D one.
Yeah.
Which is cool. All right, so what kind of shit do you want to play, right? This is kind of, you're walking into a blind zone here. And people fixate on like the classes and stuff like that, but that's not nearly as important as other choices that you make. Because you want to figure out a very brief backstory. I know Joel swears by the what, 2 sentences?
I say that you should be able to summarize your entire character's backstory in 1 sentence.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Don't
think
make
that-
it too
And now, if you
elaborate.
want to,
Every time.
it's awesome. If you want to write more than that, that's great. But like, summarize it in 1 sentence, and then we'll get to the next slide. We'll have more on that. But 1 sentence is my rule of thumb.
Yeah, you should be able to explain them pretty quickly. You know, there's always going to be stuff of, you know, do I want to make them from a hometown stuff? I think stuff like that later on is better to just kind of make up. Leave some blanks so you can fit it in to be more interesting and relevant to the party. This is something that I really like doing that I think just it helps out the DM. Because in a lot of the stuff, you're a level 1, you're fresh face, you almost know nobody. They do this in the module Dragon Heist, which is a 1 through 5, where you're allowed to basically have a contact, somebody that you're an acquaintance with, that you know, somebody that could help the party, essentially. And I think that's a good idea for a character, and having like somebody within the universe that you already have knowledge of, and that your character would be excited to see again, given the opportunity.
Do they suggest that in Waterdeep in Dragon Heist?
Yeah.
So I created 8 because my DM made me or let me make a whole family for my tabaxi because there's like a litter of cats was the idea.
That's probably that's probably just in Dragon Heist they actually have only like 10 NPCs that you can know beforehand.
Yeah, I pushed that to the limit, but I just asked him like, hey, can I have a family? And he's like, yeah. I thought he was gonna murder my family.
You're also doing it's also a good thing because you're doing some work for the DM.
Yeah, that's what he said. He like it actually kind of pulled on the rest of the party, like made it more interesting. Like obviously there was moments where they were in danger, and it actually allowed for him to have some story hooks and whatnot.
How many fucking orphans did we have in the first time we played? It was half orphans.
That's everybody.
Oh yeah, it's funny. And now, Branson, in the Curse of Strahd, my character now is taking care of 11 orphans.
Oh my god. My guy was an orphan. My first character I ever made was a fucking orphan.
His parents were dead.
Yeah, parents dead, or like it was all over the place. It was all over
Kratz
the place.
was a former slave. Like yeah.
Every like every easy backstory was just hit real quick. The only one we didn't have in the first one, we didn't have any royalty.
Yeah, you're right.
All right, so moving on. What kind of class, now that you know the general idea? The general idea of your character is, well, let's say they're, a priest and they work at this temple and they're bored. That's a good enough origin story of just being.
That's a sweet origin story.
Yes,
I would love that.
They're bored. They're a cleric that's been cloistered and they're bored.
Yeah, I love that.
I had a rogue that was a sickly child until he just got better and just left, like at a monastery and stuff like that. You can do that. Just come up with a general character idea of what you want to have, and there is a way to work that pretty handedly into most classes.
Oki, what was your first character that you can remember from like 5e or whatever, or maybe the first like tabletop character?
I think I played 3.5, and I was a druid halfling named Seamus O'Flanagan, who was
what was their backstory?
He was his entire village got killed, and they mistook him for a child, even know he was 32.
So that's
they kidnapped him and forced him to learn like evil druidic powers, but he wasn't into it.
that's awesome. But like that's a good example of like, you know, everyone's dead in your life. That's totally a fine way to start out, but it doesn't have to be that way. But that's an awesome character. I like that.
So the basic kind of party elements, right? You're going to have somebody who's kind of a frontliner, right? Not really a tank, because there isn't like taunting mechanics in 5e. There's no way to guarantee that a person fights you. There's certain stuff you can do to give them disadvantage if they attack anyone else, and there's spells like Provoke Duel or whatever, I forget it's called. But you want a frontliner because it's hard to run by them to get to the soft ones, right? You want a blaster. A blaster is just going to be range damage. You're going to want, additional melee that can come in, like rogues and monks that go in and out. And then you want a face, somebody that is good at charisma that can talk to townspeople and stuff like that. And there's plenty more different types of guys you can be if you want to be a support type, if you want to be a healer. It's kind of hard to do the pure white mage thing unless you go a life cleric, but it's possible. But you want to figure out what your kind of role is going to be. And then you're going to figure out the class kind of from there. And what do you guys think is the easiest class to play?
Easiest class to play.
I'm saying champion fighter. Fighter is the easiest one.
Yeah, I would agree. Probably that. But like, I had 3 written down.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Like,
I think clerics are probably the easiest caster to learn how to play. I would say casters are definitely more complicated than...
If you want to play a wizard, I would say go for it. Like, don't worry about it. But
that's true. That's actually a good point. Wizards actually probably are less mechanical, because I wrote down sorcerers, but there are a lot of mechanics going on there. Wizards actually, if you have a good DM and they're like, you want to be a wizard, fucking do it. Yeah.
I would say that you should research a little bit to see.
That's what I was going to say, is research spells, like, figure out what you want to do. That's going to be your class.
Because really, it doesn't take that long to learn, but I think most people that play just never actually sit down and read it. You should probably sit down and read it. Because there's mechanics...
as long as you're willing to put in the time, what I would say is, like, pick what sounds fucking cool to you.
Yeah.
And then as long as, like, okay, so you chose, I don't know what the most mechanically complex one is, but I would say Paladin, there's a lot going on. You have a lot of options when you're a Paladin, right? So if you choose Paladin, badass. I fucking love Paladins. Oki's playing a Paladin right now that kicks ass. But, like, be prepared to put in the work to learn these different mechanics that are in there. So then you don't have to turn towards the DM, or the DM has to be like, hey, do you want to use lay on hands? You're that guy.
Courtesy, like, as a player, as a courtesy, you should try your hardest to kind of learn your class, the ins and outs, so you're not just kind of totally lost when it's time to roll dice. Because the DM is a lot on their plate, typically, and then to also have to learn this player's class so you can give them the correct assistance, it's like sometimes a little too much. So try that before you start rolling.
Yeah, figure it out and try to talk to somebody that's played one, because I don't think any class is too hard, but there is some stuff where, like, if you're just going there to, like, have a beer and pretzels game and you've never played before and you don't really want to don't play a fucking warlock. Don't play a warlock, Yeah. Like, if you want to, there's plenty of easy ways to play D&D. You can play a ranger and really use your spells every once in a while. It's not too hard. So
free gens out there that you can just change a little bit of, make your own. But yeah, there's a lot of things you can do.
All right,
rangers kick ass.
The next one is just don't. There's a lot of people that feel like they want to do homebrew stuff like immediately. Oh, they don't have this race in here, so I want to be like,
I want to be a sentient piece of bamboo. Like, no, just chill
fucking
out.
Play the game. Just fucking play
chill
the
out.
game.
You agreed to play this game. Just chill out and play.
In Pathfinder, I played a mushroom based. No, just play that. Just figure it out.
Just chill out.
You don't know how to play it. Yeah, just figure it out. Like, don't
be wary of anyone coming at you with like wiki, like the D&D wiki articles. That
the fucking website should be burned to the ground.
So we had
every time somebody sends me, hey, I'm thinking about trying this homebrew, and it's from
we
D&D.
had some issues.
No, it fucking sucks.
early on where like our first table, there was a couple of PCs that we didn't know they were coming with all these crazy like abilities, and we're like, how is this happening? How is this bard wearing heavy armor? And they're like, oh, I took this thing from this like wiki page where like my dwarf can wear heavy armor because it's a racial ability now. It's like that's a crazy racial ability that would not be included in the book, and now you have a heavily armed bard, and the whole point of a bard's weaknesses is being like, you know, a glass cannon of sorts, you know. And so then their AC is 21, 22. They're stepping on everyone's toes because they're casting, attacking, like flying around. It's like, all right,
Yeah.
don't take shit from online unless it's really approved by your DM.
Unless it's approved by the DM or that's the game you're playing. Like,
Because
let's
also,
just-
most of the D&D wiki ones, like, those guys don't actually know how to play the game. Because, like, there'll be, like, they have additional subclass bonuses than other subclasses do. Like, you're supposed to get stuff at a certain level, and it'll just be all over the fucking place. Don't play a homebrew.
what it literally is just their homebrews that work for their table.
There's
Or
good homebrews.
in their head.
I've
like,
seen
it's
some good
probably not
homebrews, but
I've seen some real bad ones.
I've
let me
seen
tell
way
ya.
more bad ones. And, like, it's fun to make them. That's why I get it. Like, I've made a couple of my own subclasses, but, like, it's not something I'm going to be pushing on other people, you know? Another thing is multiclassing. I just wouldn't do it at the beginning. Just stick through with one. It says in the player's handbook that multiclassing is something that you can bring up. It's an option if you want to do it, but to me it's kind of a carryover from 3.5. And
Well,
a lot of
can I
people
jump in for just a second?
Sure.
I would say before you homebrew, consider multiclassing. Like if you are that type of player who like you're good with systems, you know, like you want to create your own thing, consider multiclassing and talk to your DM before doing the homebrew route because multiclassing is actually in the game, and I love multiclassing. I think it's super fun, but like Branson said, it can get real annoying and gross.
Especially
And
if
I
you're
know
a spellcaster. The rules, it's a lot of rules if you get that way.
I would just make sure you know what you're doing before you kind of get into that, because you can either fuck yourself like really badly and you're going to be like way behind everybody else in your party for a while. It can sometimes, like with some multi-class builds, or like you just break the game by accident or on purpose.
So the character one of the characters I'm playing right now is a ranger cleric multi-class build that I just tried. I didn't know if it'd work. I just liked it thematically. And for a while I was like, I think I fucked this character up. I think I really, truly fucked it up. And then gradually I found out how to play them. So it's kind of fun, but you are taking a big risk. Like Branson said, if you're just starting, just play one class.
Yeah, it's way easier. And then min-maxing versus role-playing is kind of a... kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with, like, the video game idea. There are people who want to... Like, the big problem with 3.5 and why 3.5 ended is because you really had to have a very clear idea of what build you were going in order to have a character that was effective in combat. And 3.5 could build characters that were insanely, ridiculously strong because of different factors of multi-classing and prestige classes and whatnot. They don't have that as much, but there are some very broken min-max multi-classes. Common dip is people going 3 into champion fighter to get extra crit chances, or, you know, especially, and it's kind of encouraged a little bit because of how the game was designed, where a lot of the kind of level 14 through 20 bonuses can sometimes really suck. And there's some level 3 bonuses that are really good. So
dude, there's some level 1 bonuses that are really good.
yeah,
like dipping into rogue or ranger is like
dipping into cleric gets anybody for one level gets them heavy armor. Like it.
No.
Yeah,
it depends on the class that you choose.
Well, if you choose like life, you get heavy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it just depends. You can make really, Somebody said Hexblade Warlock. Yeah, I fucking hate Hexblade. I actually talk about it later on in here how much I fucking.
Yeah, Branson has a lot of problems
fucking
with that.
hate it.
A lot of it about the Hexblade Warlock.
But if you're just in it for role playing, then you can make whatever you want, but you might be annoyed by other people surpassing you. A lot of people don't think they care about that stuff, but when you have somebody who's kind of built a more streamlined character, then you're gonna get annoyed. All right, playing your character. It's a good picture, Joel.
It's characters, nice characters that people made.
Wait,
People
you're suggesting
made these-
people have a catchphrase?
Well, okay, let me explain that one.
Take the stage.
Like, okay, when I say like have a catch, I'm saying like, okay, if you don't want to do a voice, if you want to like play your character, I'm talking about like role playing your character, like not necessarily like have a catchphrase, like something where they like always do something, but like something. Okay, a good example is like with Malachi, the guy I'm playing right now in Branson's campaign. Like he always says, "Blessings of Rei Harakti be upon you," and I think that that like immediately tells people that I am a priest of Rei Harakti, and that reinforces in my brain, this is what I'm doing. That's the kind of shit what I say when I'm a catchphrase. Not like, what were your
You
what
have
was
a
your,
picture of Sonic the Hedgehog, so
no,
I
no, 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 no. But
immediately-
your catchphrase for Shadow the Hedgehog was "buzz off."
Yeah, buzz
Like,
off.
That actually would be badass if a character did that. I think that'd be really
No,
funny.
if character was constantly going into taverns going, you gotta be crazy to think you can mess with me.
Cool.
Yeah.
I would like that.
Yeah, it's a great
So
character.
what I'm saying is like make it unique, like whatever you can do to make your character not just like crazy bullshit like, oh, my character always goes and jacks off on trees when he sees a tree, like that's stupid, but some way that you can make it fun.
And
People want to play with your character because they're fun or funny. Like, again, the character I played in Oki's campaign was a shitty character, but Branson liked playing with them because they were like kind of, I don't know,
they were
I don't know
really
why
mean.
they're really
Really
mean.
snobbish and mean.
They're a good foil.
They were good foil, I guess. I don't know. They were fun. I'm not sure
Yeah.
why Branson
You can
and Andrew
be
stuck
an
through.
asshole character and still be fun to play with. Like,
I would recommend like making your character. Don't make a character that's going to not work well with the party.
a good thing to do
even
too.
like-
Oh, go ahead, Oki.
Like an evil character. You can make an evil character that still wants to be aligned and see the prosperity of the people around them, their party that they are with. Like, I think a lot of people like they get so into their character that they're like, I wouldn't even be on this adventure. And it's like, okay, you can
Then go.
play
yeah.
somewhere. Yeah, just
So-
play on your own, I guess.
Real quick, as a quick diatribe, like evil characters, if you're gonna do one, your level of evil should be this perfect balance. And I would say your goal as an evil character has to be astronomically high, right?
Yeah.
The one evil character that I played, his goal was to block out the sun, right? And so like that's not going to affect what anyone else is doing in the party, because like I just want to get powerful enough to where I can cast like a fucking 15th level spell and block out the sun. That's absurd. But if you're like a lower level like evil, like I want to kill everybody, no one wants to play with you, man.
Yeah,
Just
don't
get a new
if
fucking
it's
character.
your first character, don't make a fucking evil character. They're always the most fucking annoying thing.
They are.
Because you're on the team, but you're also competing against your own team half the time if you're like a very first original character. And then they can't and if they try to kick you off, they're the bad guy because
Yep.
so it's fucking annoying. I would suggest don't do an evil character to start. You don't have to make a good character. Going the chaotic neutral route is fine, but there's so many tropes associated with it. Just don't be like Wolverine or
Well,
don't
I mean,
be,
I think
don't
you-
be a edgelord.
I think you can, like, my character right now is like leaning on edgelordiness, but like you just still have to be fun to play with,
Yeah.
and I'm not even sure what that means entirely. But just think,
Make it make sense for your character to be with the party and
Yeah.
doing things with the party. Like if it doesn't make sense to you, it doesn't make sense to anyone else.
oh yeah, for sure.
Like the character that we played in the one shot, I think all of our characters except Matt's character were evil. Like Franz was evil, and then what was your guy's name? Joel
Razak,
Razak.
Yeah,
I
he
think
was very
pretty.
evil. Tiefling rogue.
no, no discount.
He's just a miserly tiefling rogue.
Yeah,
All right. So when we're talking about expectations versus reality, don't have a complete story in mind for your character. Don't have this idea that you're just going to like, this is my character's progression. He's hunting for his sister. I want him to find his sister. Just have the I'm looking for my sister. That's a good enough reason to go fucking out there and fight, you know?
to add on to that, I made the mistake of having the most interesting story element in my character's background already have happened with my first character. It already happened.
Yeah.
So all the story from then afterwards is like it's pointless. And
Also-
they're also supposed to be be fucking level 1.
You're level 1, so you ain't shit. You've never done
Yeah.
anything. You're not strong. Like you
Trust
you
your
have
DM.
A little bit of a cut above most normal people.
you've
That's
probably
really-
had
Yeah.
like a moment in your of realization that you had potential and maybe you were able to do something before, but you're not like I killed a whole group of fucking orcs to save my village, and that like just be level 1. Like I was able to get the upper hand on this orc that wasn't looking, and I was able to slay him, and blah 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 blah. Now I want to be an adventurer.
You know what's a really fun background?
What?
And this came up earlier. I'm bored and I want to try adventuring and I want to find some gold.
Yeah.
That's it. Like that's a fun background already. You can just do whatever you want with that. And then like you'll be surprised about the amount of things that come and kind of like hit your character and then stick. And they like define that character from here on out. So just don't have the most interesting thing about your character already have happened.
Yeah. If something, a lot of new people will also get frustrated if they like roll poorly. Just lean into it. Just your guys fucking up that day. Don't like be like, okay, well I attack and I miss. Now I have to wait for another 5 minutes before I can do it. Like you can't approach it like that. Like you just have to lean into it. Bad things every once in a while your guy is gonna fucking smoke somebody, and every once in a while he's gonna. It's just up to the dice, right? So just let it happen and lean into it. Sometimes you're gonna fucking suck because you can just roll a 1 every single time you roll.
What I would do with those moments you fail horribly is you can retroactively make those story moments. So like I have a really bad habit of playing like religious characters, right? And if I roll a crit 1, it's like, what did I do earlier in that day to piss off Ray Harakti or whatever god I happen to be at that time? Like, and then I have to realign my character then. Like, you can use those moments to make your character even more fun. So,
Totally.
All right, moving on to the next one. Yeah, we kind of already talked about this. Just ease your way into D&D. I think a lot of people kind of come into it thinking right off the bat, my character does this because that's who he is. Easier, feel it out a little bit because you're going to be in a town and then there's going to be this person and that person. Don't kill the merchant, right? Don't have this enormous backstory of where you came from and all the great things you did. Just kind of embrace being a level 1 dipshit. You're not, even if you're a wizard, you know, you're just out of wizarding school. You're naive. Like, let your character grow. If you have a level 1 character who's got an eye patch and a long magical sword and this leather jacket, and I know Joel thinks he sounds really cool, but let him become that character. Don't start them off as Batman.
oh, with the Batman thing, what I'm saying is that's on me. I tried to make Batman multiple times, and like, I think Batman's like my favorite fucking like fictional character ever. But like, at the same time, like, if you want to make Batman, the cool thing about Batman is how Batman became Batman. So you can't just make Batman. Like, it doesn't work like that.
Oh,
So it's just a bad idea to start with something like that in your mind. If you want to take inspiration from a fictional character, do it, but take inspiration and make it your own.
the last part, we mentioned this a lot. A lot of people like making like Lazario characters, like, oh, I'm so sexy, I can seduce you. Don't make your DM flirt with you. It's fucking annoying. And
So-
it's annoying for everybody at the table, right?
Branson had to roleplay somebody's wife for a whole campaign.
He really wanted a wife. He really wanted to have a wife. And it's like, okay, well, you guys are going on this adventure real far away. Okay, well, I want to figure out a way I can communicate with her from long distances. And basically how it worked out is every, 3 hours, session we met up, I had to devote 5 minutes
like,
to the
here's the thing, like, another friend of mine, I think, Branson, you're playing this one too. We played a husband and wife couple. We agreed to that. Like, let's be a husband and wife couple. And we were like, we liked edging. We liked getting close to death, but not quite dying, because that was like what we liked. But
very European elves.
We were definitely Shatterkai elves. To put a DM or another player into those situations, it's just like, man.
Is it good? Do other people enjoy that? Like, it's fun. Like, so okay, we played with Juice Main Nick, and Nick was a dim-witted, great character, a dim-witted,
Juche, man.
yeah, a dim-witted human fighter farm boy, and so if there was like a beautiful barmaid or something, just go make Nick talk to them. And it was just it was funnier than having like the flirting stuff or any of that stuff. I think the best way to handle it is be like, well, I'm going to go try to get some information out of her. Just DM, roleplay 1 or 2 lines, have them make the roll, and then you find out this, you find out this, you find out this. And if you put a brothel in your game as a DM, somebody will fuck in it. So just be prepared for that, even if you didn't.
Branson speaks from experience on that one.
Even though that was really funny. It was our goblin
druid.
Really
funny. It was really funny.
Our goblin druid that great character that would transform into a rat and then have sex with other rats.
We had talked about during our campaign about the concept of a DM that's really attracted to a guy's female PC character.
Yeah. Dude, are you bringing your character?
Dude, I'm running
She's like a human wizard, but she's like so cool. Are you bringing your character to D&D?
Are you bringing Gorgana tonight? Dude, is Gorgana going to be there? Oh, shit. You show up like all nice.
Table what your character is wearing for all of us.
God.
If you want to have that kind of game, fine. But if it's just 4 men in their 30s or getting close to the 30s, and you have to just have the DM go like, "Oh, tee-hee, I'm glad you noticed," and it's just like, all right, let's skip this part. It's too fucking embarrassing for this.
Real quick, I hate it when people are like, "I'm a bard, I'm gonna seduce the dragon." Fuck no. Have that dragon pick him up and drop him from fucking 500 feet. Because like, if you're getting horny in the middle of the battle, you deserve to die.
Yeah.
And just because you roll a crit 20, I'm sorry, crit 20 doesn't mean automatic success in that regards. Like, no, you're getting fucked up. Like, I hate that shit. Ugh.
It's like always like every fake or shitty D&D story. It's like somebody.
Yeah, it's a really boring trope.
And someone said, "I'm going to seduce the lich," and rolled an
now a good character would be.
Shut up.
A good character would be an asexual bard who sings songs that try to ruin the mood. Now there's a character.
Or no, remember the love cleric me and you made up? Who likes other people being romantic?
Oh yeah, like the love cleric that was not sexual himself.
He just loves the idea of love. He wants to see people holding hands and have roses in their mouths. He just loves like romance, not even like
such an annoying. They actually made a UA cleric that was originally the love cleric. But they changed its name because people were mad that like the love cleric,
harmony cleric or something like that.
The love
cleric, Unity.
Yeah, he could make like people like each other, and people were like, "That's awful." There's definitely roleplay wise could be abused very badly.
But dude, our idea was like, I might still play that.
That's actually, I really like the love cleric.
His armor was made of hearts. Every piece of it was a heart, and his epic mount was a swan. Oh my god!
Yeah,
dude. That he had a pedal.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, moving to the next one. All right.
This is me. I'm sorry.
A little hostile.
Yeah. I just want to say, like...
Okay, well, I will say one thing, right? I get your point that you're making here, but it is a good way to retire a character. But if you...
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. And I should have talked about downtime and stuff like that. But, like, my thing is, like, you came to a table with free time on a Saturday, Sunday night, whatever. You're playing an adventure game called Dungeons & Dragons. Don't sit down and be like, well, my guy is a farmer, and all I want to do is farm, and then make everyone else fucking watch 30 minutes of you talking about how your, like, carrots are sprouting currently. Like,
I had a player in my Friday game that I'm running, like, they were really insistent on getting involved in like a very elaborate scam where they were going to sell pets to like some other gangsters, and it's like, okay, we can do this, but I don't know how to make this fun for everybody sitting at the table because it's just you like trying to make your money go up.
The way to
money,
do that is to just run it off screen a little bit.
Yeah, it was like a little.
Yeah, just be like, hey,
It
what do
kept
you
coming
want?
up-
How do you want this mechanic to work? Just send it to me
It kept
later.
coming up during play and like the setup in play, and it was a little difficult to work around. But eventually, we came to a understanding of how it should work.
Yeah, make
Just
sure.
you came to a table to play Dungeons and Dragons. Just trust
Adventure.
your DM.
Like an
Adventure. Go adventure.
Go
Like
outside. Adventure.
And don't say, well, it's what my character really wants to go farm. I'm sorry. Like, you're playing D&D. If you want to go farm, like Stardew Valley, Harvest Moon, there's plenty of games that you can do that on. Farmville, I don't fucking know. Like, write a book.
All right.
Just, let's adventure.
Moving on to the next part, I always wanted to break down combat because I feel like it takes people a while to get the mechanics of it. Because yeah, whatever you can do in real life, you can say your character does in D&D. I'm going to push them, I'm going to trip them, I'm going to do that. And there's rules for that. And those really are not what I'm focusing on here, but the idea of the action economy, right? So I'm going to start off with initiative. Initiative is how everything works. It decides the turn order, right? The second there's a hostile action, right? You roll initiative. You don't do damage outside of initiative. You have what are called surprise rounds, and then they do damage there. But a lot of times people will think that, like, if I shoot an arrow immediately, like, I get a free turn. Because there's a lot of instances where you see the guy in the distance and you immediately just start to engage while, like, other stuff is going on because you think if you don't, he's going to get the jump on you. But it's just not going to work that way. If you get the jump on somebody, they have to be unaware of you. So anyone does a hostile action, before it actually goes through, you roll initiative to see who goes first, right? Quicker characters go first. It's not about who talks first, right? I've seen DMs reward that just like, okay, we're outside of combat right now. I'm going to attack, and I get a free attack, and then initiative starts. It shouldn't go that way, because then you just reward people for being trigger happy. Now, you only get surprise rounds if they get surprised, and that's by either through deception or stealth. So you're either going to sneak up on them or they're going to be unaware or something like that, and that's how you kind of get that. So once you have your initiative and you have your turn order and it's your turn, I want to talk about the action economy, right? You got a bunch of shit you can do, but it's really 4 main things you have to keep track of. You're going to have
Can I jump in real quickly?
Yeah.
The main idea of D&D is you tell the DM what you want to do, and then they tell you what you have to roll or do to accomplish that thing that you're trying to do. That's the core idea of the mechanic, right? Like, you know, you can say, like, I cast a spell or all this shit, but really you can do whatever as long as the DM gives you parameters to do that within.
Yeah. So the first thing you have to worry about is your movement. Everyone's going to have 30 unless you're a small race and you have 25, but then you can be a monk and you can have more, and sometimes barbarians have more when they're raging. You know what your movement is. Climbing, swimming, all this stuff counts as movement. I've seen DMs try to have that be an action. Is explicitly written in there. You have a set amount of movement. Certain subclasses will get bonuses to climbing. Centaurs get a huge detraction. It's to climbing.
Should we not talk about them?
All right, we won't mention centaurs. I know you love them.
Why not?
But
Because they're weird.
Going prone, getting up, all that stuff is built into the game of how you use your movement, right? And you can even attack and move away, and if you have a second attack, attack again. So we're going to talk about actions. Actions is the bread and butter. All the big stuff is going to be in action most of the time, right? So you say, I swing my sword. I cast fireball, right? Those things have a almost cast time of an action, right? Other things such as like hiding and stuff, there's a lot of things you can do that subclasses might get as bonus actions, but essentially all that stuff's going to be in action, right? Using an object's in action, trying to interact with the environment's going to be in action if you're lifting or pushing or doing anything like that. Now, you know, warriors, they get the ability to attack multiple times. It's still one action. In your one action, you will attack 3 times if you're level 11 or something like that, right? Now, spells, people don't pay attention to it at the beginning, but spells essentially have a cast time. And it will say action or bonus action. If it's a ritual, it might be 10 minutes, and that's not something you would do within combat, but you're going to have a set amount of time to do stuff like that, right? Bonus actions are where it gets a little bit more complicated because not every low level person is going to have a bonus action. So sometimes it'll feel uneven at the beginning that, this guy can do 2 things and I can only do 1 because I haven't gotten a bonus action yet. So it is a little bit imbalanced, but you have to realize that everybody has the ability to use a bonus action, but the only default bonus action that you get is to swing with an offhand weapon if you're dual wielding. That's
I will
bonus
say
action.
those classes that you start with, i.e., Rogue, Ranger, help me out. Who else has like massive bonus action stuff going on?
Clerics get it pretty early.
Clerics get it.
Fighters get the healing thing, but a lot of bonus actions early on too. You can only use like once per day.
If you do get into a character that has bonus action, that's your shit. That's your bread and butter. And I think like you can do some really cool creative stuff with like how you use your bonus action. So
like
I personally I like having tons of options for my bonus action, even if I can't do it all at once. Like it's just super fun. That adds more flavor rather than just like, oh, I attack.
Right.
But with my bonus action, I do this.
Right. So you're able to kind of mix it up a little bit, and it's usually dependent on class abilities that you get. Like barbarians, if they go into a rage where they take less damage and do more damage, then they use that as a bonus action. A lot of spells are cast as bonus action, and if you cast a spell as a bonus action, then you can't cast a level 1 or above spell as an action. You have to cast a cantrip. So make sure you look up those rules, but you know what your own action economy is. Because by level 5... most classes are going to be using their bonus action every single turn. Rangers, essentially, every subclass gets their own bonus action that depends on kind of what ranger you're going to be. But make sure you'll be like, I'm using my action, I'm using my bonus action. And movement, action, and bonus action all happen on your turn. Reaction is something different. Reaction needs a stimulus. So, counterspell is probably the most common reaction, I would say. At least for
I would say the most common reaction is probably opportunity attack.
Oh, yeah. So, we'll do the wizard example. You're not able to cast counterspell until you see someone casting a spell. That's your stimulus. Now you can use your reaction to cast counterspell and block it, right? If you are fighting somebody, you are 5 feet away from them currently engaged, and they run away, you can use your reaction to get what's called an opportunity attack. So make sure you know all these things so you're using your character to the best possible extent you can do it. Because really, sorry, Oki.
I was going to say you can also set up a reaction during your action. So
yeah.
You can say, if somebody comes around this corner, I'm going to wait here. When they come around the corner, to use my reaction to whack them with it.
So make sure you know what this stuff is. There's other ones that you can kind of do every turn, but keep in mind you only get 1 reaction a turn. So rogues get an ability called Uncanny Dodge, where if they get hit by damage, they can half it. They can only do that once, right? So if you get hit by a goblin, he does 6 damage. But there's a giant ogre about to hit you. You might want to save your 1 reaction to have the damage from the ogre. So just keep in mind what your abilities are and play them. Because the most frustrating thing about playing with new players is it gets to their turn and they're like, I'm not sure what to do. Like, be thinking about that. Because I know that annoys me more than other people, but it's like you got about like a minute or 2 before it comes to your turn. The most frustrating one is when you say it's somebody's turn and they put their phone down and they're like, okay, well, let me see what's going on here.
Or they try to attack the character that's already dead.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, like...
You're just totally checked out.
Know what you're doing, because it's really fucking annoying to play with somebody that, first of all, doesn't really know how to use their abilities, and also every single time their turn comes up, they're just like, think about what you're going to do before you do it. And if you're not...
That should go back on DMs as well. Like, have what your enemies are going to do, like, planned out a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, if you're playing with goblins, don't they have pack tactics?
I think, no, goblins do. I think gnolls do.
Gnolls do. Okay, so, like, if you're playing with gnolls, like, they're going to probably
Kobolds
swarm
too,
one character. Yeah. So, like, just keep that in mind. A DM should be, like, on a little bit higher level than the PCs, probably, but just, like, know what you're going to do next.
A good website for that is like the monsters know what they're doing.
Yeah, that
goes through every monster manual monster and just kind of describes like
and they're like they're brutal with their mentality. Yeah, which is great. Yeah.
All right, so general tips for combat. This is just stuff that helps because a lot of people end up playing the same way. it's up to the DM to kind of reward creative thinking in combat, but you don't always have to attack. You can substitute a weapon attack for a shove or a trip. It's not going to do damage, but you're going to give your allies like a better chance to do stuff. And it helps if you have like environmental stuff. You can shove somebody off a bridge. Like there's more stuff you can do.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to try doing wild shit.
Like if you ever played a video game and you're frustrated that you can't like I don't know, pick up someone and throw them off like a rope bridge, like this is the game for you then. Like consider the environment. I think the DM would love to see you interacting with their world and using those types of things to your own advantage. And like again, it goes back to that idea of, can I do this? And the DM will tell you, okay, you can just roll these types of things. And usually you can. But I really do think it's like, don't just limit yourselves to what's on your character sheet of attack, cast spell, bonus action, or whatever. Be creative. Think about what's around you.
And the table needs to figure out metagaming during combat. I don't care about it, honestly. I think it's just talking strategy. So I don't think that like you have to yell, use your shield ability on me, Bartholomew. Like, even be like, hey, if you give me a boost to AC, my guy can kind of run up in the front, and you know the rogue will take care of any stragglers that get through. But you know, if I start getting low, I'm gonna back up. I feel like that kind of strategy makes it better. I don't mind it.
It boosts engagement. Like people like it. People like thinking tactically in those situations. And if you restrict like table talk too much, no one kind of knows what they're going to be doing, like round to round almost. They can't communicate freely. It feels constrictive.
Yeah, I think you should just let that go. Some people get really on that with table talk, but
someone brought up a good thing in chat where it's like metagaming to the point where somebody else is telling another character what to do. Yeah. That's kind of like, it does impede on agency or autonomy.
And what happens with that?
It's like I don't mind as a DM or as a player if I'm like, hey, where are you all at with HP? Because we're playing a fucking game. Like, fuck similitude at that
point.
Already
an abstraction.
And then if you're the DM, you need to just be... Honestly, you don't need to give super great clues, but it's like, okay, when a guy has like less than 20 HP and he's got 100 normally, yeah, he's breathing hard, he's bloody, he's kind of on one knee. Like...
Yeah. He's fucked up. Heal him.
Yeah. Like... Yeah. You don't have to be like, well, I have 4 HP, and I don't even mind if people do that, because this is a game.
But at the same time, if there's a table that's what they want to do, that could be kind of interesting. Like, I would be interested in playing at that type of table as long as it's established early on. Like, I hate it when a DM is just like, hey, stop talking at the table. It's like, all right, like, fuck, then we'll all just be silent and listen to you, and then just speak when it's our turn and say, thank you, master, and bow over. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't
like. It should be sort of like table talk should be allowed to a certain point, in my opinion.
That's a fun part of the game, combat and like thinking tactically. It does go too far when you have one person kind of just telling everybody how to play their character. But like, if your turn's coming up and you're like, dude, if you fucking give me a shield spell, I'd be really doing good like right now.
Well, that's a free action. You can just say that, like Brent said, like you know, if I was to yell out like, Octavius, please give me a shield, like whatever, that's fine. Like, cool.
Yeah, I think that stuff's fine. I think it depends on your table, but for me, I'm not too worried about like table talk. And even then, like, there has been some good table talk where we've even done like, you know, 2 characters are talking and a character off to the side kind of turns to the DM and goes, hey, did my guy hear that? And he's like, do you want to hear it?
Yeah, because you can turn table talk into roleplay talk.
Yeah.
Like usually a good session, like you mix the two.
Actually, if I could, Branson and I had a really emotional table talk at one point, like metagaming. Branson, remember when you were like, when Augustine
when my cleric
was trying to kill that lich? Like, I had a character who was trying to kill this lich, definitely going to die, but he was a paladin, he wasn't going to give up. And Branson's character was like trying to pull him back, and he was constantly like, you motherfucker, you're my only friend, I'll kill you if you die.
He was a hillbilly knowledge cleric.
That's why he talked like that. But it was like a really cool moment that was born from metagaming and table talk. So
then my guy got teleported to a different country right after that.
Yep.
All right, moving on to the next one. All right, so social exploration and social interaction. Joel, did you write this one?
Yeah, I'll take over if you don't mind.
I'm gonna grab a beer. MP.
Because like there was a lot about combat there because combat is a lot more mechanically complex. Just don't realize we had 3 pillars at the beginning. That doesn't mean the other ones aren't as important. It's just that combat is a lot more mechanical than the other 2, I would say.
The most
I,
important mechanically, like every class obviously has a
mechanically,
lot of
it definitely is.
killing people. And
But I still
monsters.
think that like the other 2 are more nebulous, and honestly, it's sometimes like more fun in certain ways. Like social interactions, I've had more go sour from social interactions than anything else because somebody said something wrong, and it's not a roll, it's not anything else. It's because you fucked up, and you fucking know you fucked up, which is awesome in my opinion. I love that kind of shit. And then exploration, I think, is, I have the map up there for a reason. Like, I want to go to all those cities. I want to explore that type of shit. That's not always an easy thing. Like, you kind of have to be prepared for that type of stuff. I get annoyed when someone's like, okay, see how well you explore this area and didn't leave it to a skill check or a dice roll. Oki, do you feel that same way?
What do you mean by that last
So
point?
like if I was just like I explore the room, I'm looking around for this type of thing, specifically this type of thing, and then rather than actually explaining what's around the room and making it more of like a game, they just leave it up to
Yeah,
a dice roll.
yeah, no, I don't like that. I think you can almost do a mix of both where like if a player is clever enough, they're exploring a room like in the way where you act like if you write that there's a key hidden in a room, you should know where you've hidden this key. Like you can't
Right.
just leave it to they make the perception or search roll successfully.
Yeah.
And
Like
the
and I
last
do
point is
agree with,
like, oh, go ahead. Sorry, Oki.
I agree with this slide mainly because like my Friday campaign, that Lamentations game, it's like we had like 5 or 6 sessions almost with no combat. Like no one was getting into a fight, but each time it was just learning more information, exploring, figuring out like
And that's
getting met
because that's because
NPC.
you're the DM and not Branson. Because
Yeah,
because
it
I gotta keep the
it
action
depends
moving.
totally. And like sometimes combat's unavoidable and it just happens to them, but other times when it's like the players driving things, they were trying to be like very careful and just talking with NPCs and I don't know,
yeah,
sprouting new adventure hooks that are coming down like later in the adventure.
entire campaigns can be played like no joke. Like I think in Waterdeep we had like 3 in a row where I think there was like one meaningless combat and that's about it. And like the point I'm bringing up, I'm ribbing Branson here a little bit, but it's more like he likes combat, but he knows that I like combat.
That's fun.
Oki's playing a paladin, so he probably likes combat because he's fucking powerful. And then I think we know that Andrew likes combat too. So he knows what the players like, and we know what he likes. If
Yeah.
we didn't like playing with him, we would let him know, like, hey, dude, not so much combat. But I love combat.
Yeah.
It's just that it's not necessary.
Yeah, it's also on
It-
like the setting
in
too, because
five,
Dragon Heist is just, most of the combat. There's cops that walk the street, so it's not like you can have combat everywhere versus like a wide open area. So figure out what you like and just design your setting around that and what your players like.
total.
All right, let's go on to the DM tips, because this is more fun for me. I think like it takes it's just as hard to be a good player as it is to be a good DM. People,
Can we put a caveat in?
yeah, go ahead.
I still don't think that any of us are that good of DMs
Yeah.
yet, and that like there are a lot of other resources of people who've been DMing for fucking decades that we're just giving our advice that we've done for the last couple of years, which is minuscule compared to other people. I'm not talking about Matt Colville. Or sorry, I am talking about Matt Colville. I'm not talking about Matt. What's his name? Matt Mercer. Yeah, Matt Colville definitely. Matt Mercer, not so high on. But
I'll say like as like a as a like a player of Dungeons and Dragons, I prefer DMing than playing, just because of like how, but like it's just it's a different style of playing the game. Basically, it's how you want to engage with it. Which, yeah,
Yeah,
I don't think I'm a particularly great DM, but it's fun to learn it.
Yeah, and it's just like I think people get intimidated of DM. Oh, what I was gonna say before, people often blame the DM for like a game being bad, but I think there is equal skill in being a player that like participates and encourages other members of the party. I've known players can be like a little bit selfish at the table, and DMs can be too, and then nobody gets anything out of each other. Just give what you can, and especially if you're playing for a first time DM, because a lot of DMs just get stuck DMing because, well, nobody else will, you know? So respect
Totally.
the stuff they prepare, just go along with it, and if you have any suggestions, bring it up like a normal person. But I mean, DMs just definitely have to put more work in than players do, and that's just how it's always going to be.
That'll come up multiple times.
Yeah. All right, so you have to build it for your players. They're going to make a different narrative than what you will think happens. You can, every single time I've DM'd, you think that, well, they have this, this, and this option, you know, at the end of the first session, and they're not even going to fucking get there. They're going to go fucking do something else that pique their interest, and then
Get snacks.
and you got to let it go. You got to let it, like, you got to let them kind of run the story themselves.
Yeah, if you
Oh, go ahead, Ogi.
yeah, you can't just put it on rails. They're gonna take it how they want to.
Yeah.
We could get into the railroading sandbox type of thing, but like I feel like both have their merits. But I think Oki, you're right. Like if you do just like insist that this is your story that you wrote and that like everyone has to go according to it, honestly, at a certain point, like it goes back to the previous slide. Like go write a book. Like I'm sorry,
Yeah.
it's not like D&D is not a perfect storytelling medium. It's really not. It's actually pretty bad at storytelling.
Yeah.
It's not even collaborative storytelling. It's more chaotic than that.
Yeah.
Like it's a
dice,
tabletop RPG.
Yeah, when you're starting, don't span out the entire campaign like all at once. If you're doing if you're making your own, if that's what you're interested in.
Plan out some NPCs, plan out some areas they might visit, but the overarching narrative they will figure out for themselves. I really like the last point in this one where it says make sure everyone gets a chance in the spotlight, because there is like a definite. I did this really bad. Like, okay, there's a door, you need to lift it. Roll a strength check, and the guy with 20 strength rolls a 4, and the gnome wizard rolls a 16, and then he flings. It sucks. If that strong guy can't lift it, no one else can. That guy made a strong guy, so you can't have him be overshadowed by somebody who didn't even who had strength that's a dump stat. Like, let some stuff just be for one character. If Andrew's guy picks a door and he can't, and Octavius goes, let me get a try, and he has disadvantage and blah, 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 it doesn't matter. He doesn't get it open. He can roll.
But beyond that, Branson, I think you did something smart a couple sessions ago. Is like, this is a job for Mr. Creep. Like, none of you, I'm not interested in any of you all doing this.
Yeah.
It's just Mr. Creep. I like that kind of stuff. Like, as long as especially you don't give it to the character who's like doing everything, which, you know, may or may not be there. I feel like in our session it hasn't been that way.
There's going to be a person who talks to the NPCs more too, and a good way of kind of dealing with that. Like, I feel like some tables handle it independently. Like, I know that like in our Chicago game, if we thought somebody was talking too much, well then we send Nick's character, the hillbilly fighter, farm boy. He's gonna go
so
talk.
Much more interesting.
Yeah, embrace failure. Not every interaction needs to be productive. You need to just let him fail and then figure out where to go from there. Sometimes way more fun.
I think we lost Joel.
Uh-oh. Did he leave Discord? Oh, yeah. Whatever. We'll figure it out. Here, I'll move you over a little. Hey, how the hell did I get that? Did I do that? All right, we're just going to keep going.
Cool. I wrote this one.
Okay.
Basically, I was just saying, like, it's not like a lot of people like talk up DMing as if it's like way harder than it actually ends up being. It's like, it's not that hard. There's so many resources out there, like we mentioned, like Matt Colville. There's WebDM. He wrote down Talking 20, Dragon Cast, Ag Dungeon Master. There's just so many fucking nerds that talk about it all the time that you can probably tune in and listen, and you're gonna get some good ideas.
Joel says his computer crashed. He's got a MacBook from like 1992, so I'm sure he'll be back on in like 15 minutes.
Yep, shouldn't be a problem. And yeah, I was just writing. There's like so many like modules, gaming supplements, like on Drive Through RPG that you can grab. Uh, the main hurdle is just going to be time. It just takes like a lot of time. I was lucky that I had a job that I could like on the side be working on like prep and like DMing material and like thinking up ideas. Like I just had enough free time where I could devote to it. But
The
it's
biggest
not
thing
always-
is getting the group together at the end there.
yeah, that's what I was writing. Is that your job is going to be organizing like people and all their schedules, their jobs. You're going to learn like their schedules, like what time they're off of work and shit like that.
Yeah.
Like you're going to have to
Honestly-
work on that and try to get it down. So
Between
can play as-
D&D and the podcast, I know where Andrew is almost at all times.
yeah,
Am I back
exactly.
on? Sorry
Like-
about that.
No problem.
I'm thinking about all my players' schedules all the time. It's just
Yeah,
you just want to work it out so not everybody has a life where they can just
especially
Devote
like in real
hard.
life, getting people for like a live person game. You want a core of people that want to be there every single week, and that kind of it sucks sometimes because you have to get like a night where it can't be moved, and you have to have we did Monday nights for I don't know how long.
We still do Monday nights,
Yeah.
dog.
and then it's really hard to kind of have that schedule because obviously people are going to go on vacation, and then around Thanksgiving and Christmas you might miss a lot of weeks, and it becomes
It's-
difficult to set up consistently. But the problem is if you don't have it consistently, people forget what they're doing, people forget what the motivation is, and you kind of have to coax people back into going. Whereas if you have it every week, you keep that same energy, everybody's on the same page, you're moving forward, and people actually look forward to it. So I would say if you want to play D&D, try to make it so you can really make every week, not be like, I don't really feel it right now. Like the second somebody bids like I'm not really feeling it and skips, like the whole vibe's off, because now you have a party of 4 people and there's only 3 people there, and the DM has to come up with a reason why, Lizard Man isn't there.
yeah, totally.
Why Lizard Man, Branson?
I don't know, because the first name that popped up in my head was Lazario, and I already said that, so I just went with Lizard Man.
Fair enough.
The more players you like work with, the more you're gonna have like to work around their schedules. And it's just the platonic ideal of gaming is like when you can just get it every week and everyone knows when the game is. You don't have to tell them every week like when the game is.
Yeah.
They just know when
Yeah.
to show up. But doesn't always happen that way. So you got to be on top of it and try to.
Mhm. And like
Corral.
some people aren't going to make it every once in a while, and you have to understand that. But if you, I mean, we had a game of like how many people were at our first table, Joel? Like 8.
It was 8, including the DM, which is more than.
Yeah. So
I
honestly,
recommend.
if somebody missed it every once in a while, it was a little bit of a relief.
Well, okay, I love this thing about our table is like we had this ongoing joke of like if you couldn't make it, your character ate bad soup the game before,
Yeah.
so we'd all just say
Because
like
we were
"Oh,
sick of making
man."
up. We were sick of making up lore reasons of why they were
Yeah.
gone. He ate bad soup. He's
He ate
being
bad
dragged
soup.
around in a cart.
Because he ate some bad soup, and like it was funny because it became its own thing where like a DM would be like, they serve you some soup that does not look good.
No, I'm
like
gonna
there's
try
some
it.
bones sticking. Like I'm good, and then some people would, and then I think some people did miss that section. It's like you ate some bad soup.
All right, moving on to the next one. Oh, you did this one, Oki? I'll let you run this one.
Yeah, just the different types of DMs. I read this in like the Lamentations of the Flame Princess referee book. The type A DM is the guy who wants power over all their friends.
Branson
They like
and me.
charge. They like being the boss, the man, dumb man, all that type of stuff. Type B is the guy that the DM that gets stuck with it because no one else wants to do it, and if they don't run the game, there will be no game. And then Type C is the very imaginative, creative one who wants to kind of share all of their creations with everybody. I think all of them can be a good DM. The first guy is probably like, it's going to be probably has some personality issues you got to deal with sometimes. But I think like with discipline, everybody can be pretty good at it. And usually type B is probably going to be the best, like, or the better DM, like going off, because they're not going to be that upset with.
Because I feel like they're also thinking about everybody else. Like, well, if I'm not doing it, the game's not going to happen.
They're
Therefore,
already thinking about everybody else beyond just their own.
Like, type C might seem like the best, but at the same time, they're really wanting to show their world, and that can get sketchy.
Yeah, that can get, because then it doesn't become the player story.
Yeah, I'm probably more of a type C, but like I like think like I said, like anybody can be good at it. You just gotta require discipline. When I started, I was type B because somebody bailed on the previous DM position, but now I would consider myself a type A, and I would say Branson's a type A. No offense, Branson.
No problem. It's fine.
Hey, bud.
I am demand.
You are demand.
All right.
You're demand, dude.
Moving on.
Oki, you're more demand than Branson now.
That's not true.
That's true.
That's true.
It's canon.
This one I kind of talked about a little bit about really having a good, consistent group, because this is how D&D falls apart. Yeah, people that play, I played for a little bit. We had like 4 weeks in, and people started missing, and then we didn't schedule, and blah, 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 blah. That's what kills D&D more than like people, I think, losing energy. So really, if you're going to do it, just fucking lean in. Like, you have to be like, it's better. It's better if you lean in. You can't be like halvesy, like, I don't really want to play D&D, but he talked me into it. Just fucking lean in or don't, because you're going to end up wasting other people's time and your own time. And it's fine if you don't want to play D&D. But I think if you're going to do it, I think you really should, like, put more into it. It's not like a video game where you can lean back and kind of play while eating chips. You got to really, like, it's better. The more you put into D&D, the more it will give you back.
It really does. Like, as cheesy as it sounds, like, maybe we haven't talked about that enough, is like, it sounds really complicated, but holy shit, I've had so much fucking fun with it. Like, over the last, like,
D&D.
It's so much fun.
It's my favorite hobby by far.
Yeah. I mean, like, I love playing music, and I love reading and all that shit, and teaching. That's like what I do. But like, I also love D&D just as much, because it's like, man, it's sometimes like, even if I'm writing a song with my band and like recording a song, sometimes D&D can be just as rewarding. Like, holy shit, we had this amazing opportunity tonight, like, with our characters to become, I don't know, like, more coalesced, and it didn't happen because of this. That's like a crazy.
There's no better feeling than when a session just fucking works and like everything is.
Yeah. It's really, really fucking neat. It's really interesting. Yeah.
And then, okay, one thing, I think we've mentioned this a couple times, just, I was really guilty of this. I still do it with perception checks too much, but just constant skill checks. Because alright, and this is one that has kind of been talked about a lot, multi-tiered skill checks, where you need to land an acrobatics check, and then after that you're going to, the more dice you have to roll, the more likely you are to fail. So keep that in mind. If you want your players to, like, be able to do things, keep it to one roll. Even if there is something that could maybe mildly apply to acrobatics, the more you have them roll, the more likely it is they lose. Like, I think let people do kind of risky stuff if it is in their character, and just give them the one roll.
I think it's also like, at a certain point, you think that D&D is all about rolling dice, and the thing is, it's not. Like, it's really not. Like, the whole game could be played largely without dice. But you have this idea in your head where you're like, well, dice have to be hitting the table to make this D&D. And, like, it's okay if they're not. You know, it's totally okay if you're not making people roll dice. You know, that will happen eventually, of course. But, like, don't feel like you always have to make every single thing a dice roll. Because then, like, what's the point of you making a character if it's all up to chaos?
I'm going to say that goes for players, too. Like,
totally.
As a player, you should be telling the DM what you want to do, and then they'll decide if there's a dice to roll.
Fucking annoying as a DM when somebody just rolls, and you don't know what the fuck they're rolling for.
Branson, I got an 18 on an insight check, so are they lying?
Yeah, just
Yeah,
wait
like,
until you are prompted to roll. People that be like, if you're going to attack, yeah, okay, it's combat, you're attacking, that's fine to just roll. But people will just start rolling. And
there was a one time where I think you wanted to roll like an insight check. It was on a succubus, and my thought, I didn't let you roll it because I was thinking like, if he fails this, like this is a pretty obvious like trap, and I know already you're thinking it's a trap because you're talking like you want to roll the insight roll, but it's like if you failed the insight roll, now you're obligated to go
yeah,
along with
yeah,
it.
yeah.
You're locked into that.
Yeah.
Think
I
about
remember that moment, and I still quote that moment. I was like, I think you said, I'm not going to treat this as a lie detector test.
Yeah,
And it's like, just because you have a D20 in front of you doesn't mean that it's like, well, let me see if I can just do this thing. It's not an automatic.
and like my thinking is like if the player's already suspicious enough where they want to roll an insight roll, it's yeah, exactly. It's going.
Yep.
Also, some things are so muddy that you should give people two options to roll. And depending on their options, they may get slightly different answers. But it's like, I did the instance when you guys found that dead body that was covered in runes. I let it be an arcane or a religion check. And you might have gotten slightly different information from either, but it also allows people to play their characters a little bit better.
Yeah.
Another,
And it's also like, well, look at the interrelatedness of those two things within your world.
Yeah.
I think that speaks a lot to like world building too. But yeah.
the last part of this one is a really good one where it's just like give experience points for things that aren't combat. It's really straightforward because otherwise they only get stronger by fighting, which power gamer types, it may not be everybody, but there are definitely going to be people that are like, I want to hit level 5. Let's go fuck this Minotaur up that's crying or something, you know?
Whatever you give experience for, it's what the players are going to do. What I like, it's just going to determine the type of game you're playing. Like again, my Lamentations Friday game, it's you get experience. You get very little experience for killing monsters. What you get experience for mostly is like you get a 1-to-1 experience for the amount of treasure you recover from
yeah.
So that's like an old school kind of mentality, like the OSR. When we say
So
OSR, we mean old. What is it, like old school Renaissance?
I'm
Is
not
that what
even
OSR
sure.
means?
Revival, I think.
Revival, yeah. So like that's one way of doing it. Oki, I like that you reward beyond just like monster instances or like just treasure, like because the thing is, what if someone makes a character who's not necessarily super interested in event like the classic sense of adventuring? Like you should still reward them for going out and figuring out stuff. Like I
Depends,
think
yeah.
if somebody figures out a big plot point, if you have a plot, or like they can get a king or a queen to admit something, that's huge.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit. Like, talk about like social interaction. Somebody finds a secret portal to another realm.
Yeah.
That's like, you are becoming like a very, very prominent player in that world already. So you should reward that.
One of the things I do is that if a player is able to get around an obstacle, I give half experience for that monster, which is something that I found. It encourages creative thinking, and I wouldn't give full because they didn't expend nearly as many resources as they would have earlier, right? So they're still able to press on and get further on. So it's automatically beneficial because they still have those resources to deal with stuff going on, but they're just not able to like completely get it all by.
I usually have it like if you can break the enemy's morale, you get the experience that you would get for killing them, but you don't get it again.
Also
so if
for
you're
sparing a little
I
bandit.
usually give full for that kind of stuff.
I give full for sparing people.
No, I was gonna say for sparing and for getting across the monster without that kind of stuff. That's like a rare instance,
Yeah.
and I just go ahead and get full. But teach their own. Like I'm not against what you were saying either.
like I said earlier, it's like whatever you give experience for, it's going to determine what the players are going to be doing. So just think about that when you're thinking about your game.
Hence murder hobos.
Yeah.
People who kill everyone.
I got really lazy during our campaign and just kind of started doing milestone after doing.
But also at that point, like I think we all trusted you as a DM.
Yeah.
We didn't really care. We were so into our character's own development and stories, and like I was so obsessed with Karai at that point that like
I can tell everyone was invested enough where I wasn't
Yeah.
about like making
Like,
sure.
if your players are invested, then it's so much easier. Like you said earlier, Oki, it's like it's so easy.
I wanted to talk about this just because I feel like this is one of the very first hurdles a new DM has to jump over, which is the ambiguity of stealth and illusion magic. Stealth itself, people will play differently. Some people, it doesn't matter what stealth you roll if you're in eyesight or whatever, and some people, I've seen people just do like you can sneak past a guy if you just wait and he's looking right at it. It really is up to the DM to how they want to interpret stealth. And so I think it always has to be a conversation with anybody that wants to make a high stealth character. I think it's best done when it's not done like Skyrim, which sometimes new people will approach it like, I'm going to sneak by them, right? Well, they're looking right at you, so you can't. It doesn't matter what you roll. But to figure out...
You could roll a 40 on that check somehow. If you have all the bonuses, it still doesn't matter. They're looking right at you.
And stealth is one of the things, too, that if you have a rogue with natural talent, you have them with a proficiency in stealth, or expertise in stealth, pass without trace. There have been stealth checks that are upwards of plus 30. Like
Easy.
They can get insanely big. So it's like you're not able to just walk right by a guy then. There's still visibility and things like that. So you have to figure out, what does it mean? It means you're soundless, you're compact, you're moving smoothly. Like, you have to have a good reason of how you sneak by somebody. Honestly, I had to have a conversation with Andrew a little bit about sleight of hand, because, he would say, I'm going to pickpocket this guy, and it's like you're standing right in front of him.
You're talking
how
to
does that person. How does that work? Because that's like a little bit of Skyrim-like stealth. So it's like, all right, so then all we did was have a conversation, and then the next session he was bumping into guys. It makes for a better gameplay to even have these conversations, because people typically do better when they're prodded. Hey, let's do this a little bit better, and it makes it cooler.
I think it makes it for more immersion as well. I love Rangers, and I typically play Rangers, and I just love the idea of like, okay, well, my guy right now, he hunts the undead. So it's not just like I'm searching for undead. Like, no, I'm looking for bits of flesh. I'm looking for little pieces of skin. I'm looking for like claw marks on walls or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of stuff that allows for all the players and characters and DM and yourself also to delve further into that immersion if you're willing to make that extra jump, and rather than just assume that if I roll this die, it's okay. Like, whatever.
With illusion magic, it gets a little bit more complicated, but I think this is the best piece of advice I can give for illusion magic, is that you have to keep intact of the spell level of what they're doing. A lot of times, people that really want to be good at illusion magic and stuff like that will have a level 1 spell, and they'll expect it to do a lot. And you have to look at the power equivalency of other stuff that is there. I think the best instance of this is Major Image and Fear, because Major Image is a spell where you can decide what it looks like, what it sounds like, but physically it has no contact with the material plane, right? You can put your hand right through it. So how do they react to that? Because what it can do is very clearly defined, but what it does to the enemy isn't. Now, the enemy has a very specific thing about if it can figure out if it's real or not, but that doesn't really affect how it reacts. So with illusion spells, I want you to look at kind of how Fear works with, like, in comparison to Major Image. Fear will have a group of people able to run away, right? So that's something you would want to base something like Major Image on, depending on what they're doing it for. But it really is the most challenging kind of group of spells for a DM, because it doesn't say how the creatures react to what they see.
Oki, have you had any like illusion wizards play for you as a DM, or something like a Ken in other games?
I tried to play an arcane trickster with one DM, and I just couldn't figure out, like, it was a one shot, so we didn't talk too much beforehand, but I couldn't figure out like it was the first time I was playing anything like that, and I was trying illusions and stuff, and just it felt like people I was doing this against like weren't making checks; they just could instantly see through it, like because the DM kind of thought that they should be able to, and it can be just a dissonance. And then later on, the DM tried to like make a minor illusion to like trick the PCs as a. It's hard to do illusions as a DM. I'm gonna say, like, unless if you're telling them that you're already casting an illusion, and then like you want them to have the dissonance to act as such. It's I don't know.
To back up what Branson said, like, and what Oki just said too, is like, if you're gonna DM this, or you're gonna be a player who wants to do this, because I don't want to dissuade anyone from doing like stealth or illusion, because they're both really fun. What I would say is, be prepared for some conversations that don't have to turn into arguments.
Yeah.
You know, like, all right, so Branson says like, this is the way I rule illusion magic, and then I say like, well, yeah, you said that. However, I did this. That is a thing that is like an image that is against this one group of people that they might not really like. That's a conversation that you can have in game. That's not a bad thing. Just because you're
not a bad thing to have it open the table, because a lot of DMs will be like, "We'll talk about it later." Just talk. Just do it.
Yeah, exactly. So just be ready for that with those two things in particular. But for the most part, if you're playing and you like your table, it'll be fine. But it is difficult. Those two things are difficult.
And if you want to be an illusion guy, you really should hash it out before you know. I think what I've learned is hash it out before you start playing.
Yeah.
If I do this and what this situation was going to do, because it is also like up to the DM to reward creativity, right? Because if you cast a spell and the monsters see you casting a spell, and then a giant demon appears before you, then you can reasonably expect that the monsters are going to have a good chance not to be tricked, right? Now, if you have it walk around a corner, it's a whole different thing, you know?
Depending on the level of spell, like I think you said that earlier. Like, I mean, a demon appearing in D&D is not unheard of.
Yeah.
Like,
so it's a lot of open for interpretation, which Fireball isn't. There's nothing open for interpretation with
Fireball. Kicks nuts. I can't wait till Malachi gets that.
Fireball, Fireball is the most straightforward. You literally point at a spot and it explodes, and it tells you how far. That's another thing. A lot of people, especially over Discord and stuff, will want to play Theater of the Mind. It's really hard when you get down to spells and spacing. Classes like Rogue and Monk and Disengage and things like that, it's very difficult to do Theater of the Mind when you have that level of kind of complexity. If you got two fighters bashing each other's brains out, there doesn't even need to be a fucking environment. But for most things, you need an environment and like actual set distances, because otherwise it becomes really hard to figure out. But yeah, that was one thing I wanted to bring up on Stealth and Illusion. Go to the next one.
So this slide, they were supposed to be animated, because this is my idea of cool, like right here, like this cool elf.
Let's get them a little small. That guy is
and
so cool.
that rule of shit. So okay, that's the whole point. Is like my rule of cool is like fucking dark elf rogue lady, badass. And Branson's idea of cool, which I think is shit, is like a fat dude in armor. He sucks. He shits everywhere. He farts. He drinks beer. He's awful. Clearly, the other lady's Branson. Can you put that other lady like in front of him?
It's not.
Could you maybe move him aside?
It's freezing.
Oh, okay. Can maybe we just move him to the side?
Yeah. Wait, hold on. Wait.
There, yeah.
Wait,
see,
hold on.
she's
It's
so
just
cool.
fucking.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying she's so much cooler than the other.
Doing that.
Why is it? Oh man. Okay. Well, the program's fucking it. Never mind.
Yeah, the program's fucking up. No, but the rule of cool is the nerds at Wizards of the Coast talk about this all the time. If something's cool, it wins. Like, if something's cool, you should embrace it. Like, now, if you have a guy that's constantly trying to do cool shit, maybe make him make the fucking couple of rolls because he's an attention hog. But I'm thinking of the instance of Octavius when he wanted to stand on top of the Galeb Dur. One roll, yeah, you're able to do this fucking incredibly complicated maneuver of standing in, and you miss the attack roll, even though you had advantage. But
yeah, that was funny.
But like, just like, make it a very low DC. I mean, it's cool. It's cool if they fail, because then they fall, and it's cool if they succeed. to win.
I had a tabaxi monk who, like, he had a +12 to acrobatics. And so, like, he didn't make me roll to see if I succeeded. He made me roll a d8 to see how many flips I would do in the air. Like, why not? Like, oh, you want me to roll
Let
a
the rogue
d20?
flip. Let the
I
rogue
got a
do a
crit
flip.
one, just still at 13. Like, cool, I'm jumping from 10 feet
Let the
high.
monk
Who
do a
cares?
flip, because if he's on a roof and everybody's like, "All right, let's get out of here," you better believe if you're a good rogue or a good monk, you're going to do a flip. Let them do the fucking flip, please. Don't make them roll, because they're not going to face plant if they're a trained acrobat.
Right.
All right.
And also, like, if they're not that type of character, like, trust your PCs as well as a DM. Like, are they going to do a front flip if they're like a heavy plated paladin? Like,
No.
if they do, make them roll, but
Yeah.
they're not going to.
Octavius will never flip. He's got to roll for that every time.
I'm not
He's been doing Dark Souls rolls the whole time. You just haven't been
just
paying
doing
attention.
All right. So the point of the rule of cool is that you allow something that mechanically should not be allowed without rolls to happen, because it is cool, it has good storyline value, and it doesn't happen all of the time. Now, the rule of shit is something I made up, that it is stuff that is technically allowed.
Wait, that character that's it's a rule of shit character.
Yeah.
Kinda like shit.
Him?
Yeah, it's a rule of shit. Look at that character. Don't play that character.
He's cool. All right, so stuff that is technically allowed, that is 100% by the rules, that you should fucking get rid of if you don't like it. They always say the DM's right? Which kind of sucks, because the DM should be playing the game, but the DM should be participating with the players, deciding what goes on. I fucking hate the spell polymorph in how people use it. I hate that so many people on like the D&D Reddit and shit will say like, oh, my wizard loved using polymorph. He would constantly polymorph the other members of the party to fight as a giant gorilla. And two, that sucks. That fucking sucks, because now they're not even playing their own characters. They're playing a fucking gorilla, right? Mechanically, which is just a stat block with a bunch of HP, it gets knocked down and then it's reset. It's broken, it's stupid, and it's bad for the story. It's annoying. And Conjure Fae is another way somebody has tried to do this, where you can conjure pixies, and every 6 pixies who all have the polymorph spell and can polymorph the whole party. That's fucking lame. Yeah. That's so lame.
Well, I mean, I think that's like those are two examples that like can clearly be like cleared up in either like original discussions or just right when it happens, be like, hey, I'm not really down with that. I think that's
lame.
But if someone wants to be transformed into a gorilla as a barbarian,
yeah,
that sounds kind of sweet to me.
But here's the way people get around it. People on D&D will say, yeah, it's broke, but when they're polymorph, they have a low int, low whiz. I don't like beating rules with rules when it's something I don't like anyway. Like even Conjure Fae Animals. With all Conjure Animal spell, technically the DM chooses all of the animals all of the time. The DM is supposed to choose what comes when you cast it. So they wouldn't have the pixies come, right? But that's beating mechanics with mechanics. And it's fucking annoying to me. So
I think what it means is like that if you can't conjure pixies, you can't, but you can choose what animals might be in your world. Is the way I interpreted it.
Yeah.
But you're not wrong. Like if your world, like I can't imagine a wildfire right now, like the campaign we're playing with Branson. I can't imagine there being pixies around there. Like there's nothing fucking Fae involved there. So yeah. I would bring up, like, especially with spellcasters, I would bring that up with your DM. Like, hey, can I do this kind of stuff? But they got to be cool. But, like,
if you think you got, like, a weird thing that you're not sure how it'll play over, like, probably just bring it up to the DM. Ask them what they think.
The Hexblade...
Brance, you want to go? Oh. Yeah, I was just saying, do you want to go off about the Hexblade?
The Hexblade Sorcerer Paladin multiclass is the most fucking annoying thing to ever happen to fucking D&D. Because they all... 3 of these classes have such low-level bonuses, where essentially you want to go to Sorcerer to get meta magic, which means you can get Twin Spell, which one spell can now affect 2 people. And then you go into Hexblade. Hexblades have an ability where they can use Charisma as their melee attack stat. And then Paladins have the Smite ability. So what happens is Sorcerers, using their Sorcerer abilities, they cast Hold Person and Twin it. They auto-crit when they attack, and they're using their Charisma modifier, so it's higher. And then you just blow everything up. You blow your whole wad, and you do fucking insane damage. And people defend it I'm going, Joel. I'm going. People defend it by saying like, well, it's a good character design. It's what my character would have done. It's happened really naturally. And it's 100% a lie. If you design this character, it's because you want to be powerful. And people try to justify it by saying, oh, it's a storyline reason. That why? No, it's 100% a broken build. And people try it constantly because it is
So what I'm
allowed.
trying to say, I agree with you. That build sucks, but I think what that is the result of is that they're trying to multi-class charisma
Yeah.
build. And the problem is like there aren't that many intelligence builds. Like,
There's
so
none.
why
There's
isn't a
wizard.
warlock an intelligence build? Like that never made sense to me. So like,
Well, they
you're not wrong.
play
You're not
tested
wrong.
it.
You're-
It's from a play testing thing where
well, then fuck that.
yeah.
You're not wrong.
I would
at
let
all.
any
What
warlock use it. I would prefer it honestly.
I prefer it too. But like what I would say is that's just the result of mathematics applied. Like they don't have a character build. They don't have an idea for their character who's going what they're going to be. Like I would say like lots of times making a suboptimal character is fun and honestly like results in some really good role playing and some really good stuff. Like, you know, who knows, maybe your DM will throw you something like an item that like kind of makes up for your lack of ability because you made a suboptimal build. Just make the character that you think is cool and don't rely on like don't go online and be like
Look up
what's the most powerful D&D
how do
build?
I
'Cause then you'll
do
end up
a
with another
Gloomstalker
random
Shadow
brand.
Monk multi-class that gets advantage on?
I would love that. That'd be so much fun.
Yeah, that's like one of the soup du jours of get sharpshooter, and then
It's so good.
fuck.
It'd be so much fun.
It's there's potential for min maxing. It's not like as bad as 3.5 was, but still fucking exhausting. All right, let's go ahead and get to the Q&A here and start wrapping this up. I'm gonna start reading some of the questions we got on Discord earlier. Oki and Joel, are either of you guys monitoring the chat?
Yeah, I got the chat.
All right, can you just start pulling questions from there after I go through these? If people want to start asking questions now.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so I'm gonna go. These were questions that were from the Discord earlier. Whoops. Oh, there we go.
I think you cut off, Joel.
I was saying that. Do you want to like copy and paste those into the document so Branson can see, or?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, go ahead and do that. All right, so the first one was from Ricky on the Discord. She says, "Nice. I was wondering what type of timescales you prefer for different types of campaigns." She's got a multiple one, so we'll start with that one. With timescales, I don't really worry about it too much because honestly, like, so much will happen, and you'll play for 6 weeks, and 3 weeks time has passed in the game. It's super urgent, and it feels like people are like gaining power rapidly. So I don't really worry about timescales. I like to have a time that it's at. I usually just go for a season, and I like counting the hours in the day just for exhaustion and stuff like that. But other than that, I really don't worry about a timescale.
Can I push back 100% on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
As someone who's prepping like a survival campaign that's like heavy survival, I think it does. The lame answer is depends on your campaign, and it depends on your players, and depends on what you're trying to achieve, right? If you want to bring in downtime, and downtime shouldn't just be a day or a week, but maybe months or years. I think you need to decide that as to what your campaign wants to be. There's not one answer as to what the amount of time passes is going to be. So I'm doing Out of the Abyss pretty soon, hopefully, as a DM, in a couple of months probably. And like there are moments where they're going to be like down in the Underdark for like months and months and months and months and months. And like I'm okay with being like, hey, you all have been traveling for a week. What do? Do you craft some weapons? Do you find some food? Let's make some rolls. Let's do it that way. That's exploration. But like there's other campaigns like Waterdeep, it was day by day.
Yeah.
The lame answer is it depends on the campaign.
Honestly, even in Waterdeep, there's stuff where it's like, okay, well, if you do an investigation check at the docks, it tells you 6 hours has passed and you found out that, like, so I'm okay with like flash forward type stuff, but on a day-to-day thing, but it really depends.
What do you say about that? Because like I felt like the pace with what we ran when we were players and you were DM was really nice.
Well, yeah, our pace was kind of lightning pace almost. Like we were, or I wouldn't say that. I would say more. I stuck with you like every part of the journey. I don't think we didn't do much like uh, downtime or anything like that. But I do think like time scales are important. I think you should, as a DM, probably have in mind like certain things that might happen without the player's input, like just events that could happen in the background where just time has passed and then this happens, and how do the players react to that? I think having
that brings up an interesting
scale
point.
that doesn't affect the players
Well,
necessarily.
let's not get on to another point because we got a bunch of these questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
She kind of follows up a little bit, says DM Guide uses months and years for the in-between adventures. Yeah, we've done that as well. Do you ever scale it back? Well, here's the... She says, how much time would you put into building the campaign between sessions? I used to put a lot more. Now I take about 3 hours to get ready for the next session, probably. I sit down on like Sundays and like hammer it out from like 2 to 5.
My answer would be front load as much as you can about the world.
Yeah, I did
not
a
the
ton
story,
of shit before.
Not the plot, not the characters, the world. Front load on that. You know, like if you know that you're gonna do a campaign in a month or so, front load in the world, and then spend an hour or two or three's a lot. If you want to do that much, then do it that much before the campaign. But don't think about the players, because they're not going to go through your whole world. So you don't have to think about like, oh, they killed this monster over here. What's that mean for this fucking remote village over in yonder mountain? Like, don't worry about that.
Think about things like in terms of like when you're prepping, the way I thought about it was like, how far could they get reasonably, like within one session, where I could, and if I could plan like a little bit over that, then I'm happy. Like if you can, I guess I don't know how to word it, but like if there's a village like 2 weeks away, I'm not going to figure out everything that's in there because there's no way you get there like immediately. I'm gonna work on the things that you can actually reasonably get to in a session's time.
Brait says, favorite characters you've played, most hated D&D archetypes. So, Hexblade, Sorcerer, Paladin, I fucking hate with all my heart. I don't know if that's like an archetype, but I would say...
Super edgelord rogue
yeah.
who steals everything, and they're like, oh, you can't trust me.
Gambit. Guys, so many people make fucking Gambit, and it's
not even Gambit, man. At least he's like a decent person. Just like somebody who just steals everything. Like, whoa, well, I'm stealing shit. Like, why are we traveling with you? Then get the fuck out. Like, why did you agree to play D&D?
I think my favorite character I've played was the half-orc monk Nomad. Just a dipshit that was like basically made to fight, and then kind of his whole thing was to get stronger, and then he got too old and he wasn't strong, and he had like faced his own mortality and just ended up becoming like a sensei. I'd say that was my favorite character I've played.
Okay, least favorite build and favorite character.
My favorite character I played was Franz von Hatzfeld, the wizard. I really like that guy.
You killed it. Like, you made the most important move I've ever seen of like detect thoughts in the first. That was the first roll of the game. Holy shit! I think my favorite character is probably Kurai.
Yeah, Kurai's a great character.
Like I know I've talked about them several times, but just like I felt like
he's a celestial half-elf celestial warlock who is just rude
and just so fucking rude and mean, and like it was total Joel in a character, and like I felt like you all just dealt with it in the perfect way. Or like, god damn, they were such an asshole, and like perfect to the story, they became a demigod. Like, I mean, Kurai is, and thank you for Oki for letting Kurai fucking happen like that.
All right, so the next question, this is just Joel. What wine pairs best with beer?
Oh, that isn't really a real question, but the thing is, what you should do is like if you drink a very bold wine, like a really, really strong like Cabernet or like a Malbec or something like that, it'll like torch your palate. So what you should do is drink a beer after that, because the bubbles actually kind of cleanse your palate a little bit, especially like a stronger IPA or something like that, or like a lager, something lighter, not something heavy like an imperial stout. And then like the next wine you have, you'll be able to palate back on there. So
Jesus. All right, Leah asks, how do you guys design an interesting religion, pantheon, etc. for your games? I know my answer to this, but I don't want to leak too much. So why don't you guys go first?
Okay, you go.
Like, yeah, what I did for our campaign was I wanted, because I always sucked at that. I never could think of like interesting gods and pantheons and stuff. So what I did was I gave it to the players. I wanted it to each player had to create their own god, like just because that was the whole thing. Is each character had to be like the champion of a different type of god, and then I took all their gods that they gave me and just tried to weave it into one big pantheon, like where they all all the gods had their own. I had to come up with like what they actually were.
I'm not even going to offer like an alternative way about it because I think Oki's approach was already the best. Like, if you want your players to be involved, what better way to do it than like your religion? Like, tell me about your religion and your god that you make up. Maybe you picked it from Forgotten Realms or from whatever pantheon. Just use it, and like Branson used Ray Harakti, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a god in our Chicago game, and it was a god in Oki's game. It's just been a god in multiple campaigns.
It's a god in our campaign right now. But like, point being, like Oki was like, yeah, just bring it forth. Like, that's honestly the coolest answer. Is to let your players develop it.
I think a good way of
like say like pick a god from a pantheon of like other settings.
I think a good way of doing it is if you're making everything from scratch is I don't think it's that bad to even look at the alignment squares and just be like, okay, you want a lawful neutral guy, you want this guy, you want this guy. Like, it's not going to be it's not going to be like super complicated. You can just have, I want my chaotic neutral guy, and you can even erase those alignment titles, but it's a good way of like starting off. And I also think it's important that the gods have a storyline because they're not really stagnant. They might not interact, and it may not have a place with your players, but you should kind of know what's going on in the universe. So I think have an overarching kind of narrative for the gods of what's going on with them that doesn't even affect the players, because really once you get high level, if you play for long enough, the gods kind of have to get involved a little bit because your guys become so powerful they just can't keep killing goblins. The next one, Vercroy, for group size, you deviate from the 3-player you've been doing in this one. Any minimum, maximum rules of thumb to play by? I think 3 is the minimum. I think going more than 5, everyone gets a little bit less from it. But I'd say 3 to 5 is what I recommend.
That's the sweet spot.
I think that you can do more. Like Branson, the Chicago table has always had more. And we've learned to accommodate that. And that's okay. Like, if you have that many people who want to play, I would say don't be like, no, you can't play. Expect for a little bit more to handle. And
for people to not show like and not be there, and probably try to plan for that ahead of time.
Totally. Yeah. So I don't know, between 3 and 8's a lot.
Yeah.
We've done that and it worked and it was fun, but like it is a lot. Yeah.
All right, moving on to the next one. How do I get started if I'm a loser with no friends? Adventurers League. Are there any good online D&D simulators if you don't have people to start?
Dude, Roll20 has so many different options for people to like.
Just look on Roll20.
Join in, and like I want to put this out there. I'm considering doing this. Like, I was thinking about posting this in Discord a couple days because I am a teacher and like I have summers off. I'm willing to DM like an online Roll20 session with some people who haven't played before. If you all are interested in that, let me know. Just like, I don't know, post or like DM me on Twitter or something. Like I'm putting that out there because that would be fun.
Yeah.
Because like the point being is like there's always a scene for you. go to your local comic shop. Like, go to
Have basic
I don't know.
social skills, though.
Well, but I
Try
mean,
to.
It's
At
not
least.
that necessary.
it's
Unfortunately,
not even that necessary. To be
Well, there's a
honest.
lot of horror stories with adventurers group and stuff like that as well.
Right, but Adventures League like a lot of like min-maxing and stuff. But like
online
I don't know.
groups.
If y'all are interested, I'd be willing to DM, especially like Minds of Fendelver. I fucking love Minds
Yeah.
of Fendelver, and I've DM'd that twice.
All right, this is a really good username for this guy. I'm excited. Breakfast Man asks, how do you handle side quests or character development quests without breaking the main narrative? Well, I think just to answer your short one is have it feed into the main narrative a little bit. I mean, you decide what the main narrative is, right? So it's like
you can move like in our game. Like I moved like different like hints and like things like
also
clue.
anytime
like-
you have something set up where it's like, okay, well, this is obviously the main quest and these are side quests. I think that's like the wrong thing to do about it. I think there should be lots of fingers in the pot almost that all lead to the same spot.
If I can push back on that a little bit, I don't think that it like everything always necessarily needs to tie together. Like if somebody just wants to build a house, like that's like a legit thing. Like I just want a house. I think that they could just be like, all right, well then who wants to help him build a house? I don't know. Like hopefully at that point when you're willing to deviate and from the main quest, whatever that might be, or like from the party, you can be like, well, they all really appreciate each other a lot, so they can all kind of help each other. I don't know if that really helps.
I guess I would say like like not everything needs to relate to one thing. Like obviously, you can have things that are just standalone things that they can interact with or not. But I would, suggest like don't think of things as like there being one main path that they should be going on, but rather there's just a bunch of things that they can touch.
There was a session when Oki was our DM, and I literally sat in the witch's hut the whole time. And I think what did Karai do? I think they did a little bump of cocaine. I think they like weaved like they.
The witch gave you poison tea, and you just
and it didn't work. It didn't work.
The Constitution roll.
I just sat there the whole time, and honestly, like I was listening to Andrew and Branson. I think you all were hunting a stag.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like it worked out like okay. Like I don't know. Like tell your players like, hey, we're gonna do this for a second. If you're interested, cool. Go along with them if they're your friends. If not, like maybe hang out for a second and pay them back later.
Just be aware of how much, I guess, screen time is what I refer to it as you're taking up. If you have a really quiet player as well, just invite them to do something to kind of get them a little bit like more comfortable. Because a lot of people will try to blend in the background and just do.
Yeah, totally.
What other people do. Give them an opportunity to make a decision by themselves.
My thing is like make sure that the players know what they're getting
bit.
into. Like if you're gonna just do that, that's a kind of different kind of campaign than like most people expect. But like Oki did that a little bit, and Branson's doing a little bit now, where it's like a hex crawl. Like hex crawls are a really good way to do survival. I wouldn't get so nitpicky where that you're like really saying like you don't have enough like water to survive throughout the night. Like that kind of sounds a little bit lame for D&D in my opinion.
Yeah.
But like instead, like okay, well like can the druid make of the party? Can they make plants or water like come up from the ground? That's really cool. That can waste the resources that will go against them in a future combat. Like mix survival with everything else and exploration with everything else, and it'll be really fun.
All right, Rock Monkey. How would I best go about trying to get some friends who don't play to play? And as a DM, how do I rein in a player who's being uncooperative with this group? I would say if they don't play to play, man, you might just look for a different crowd. You really can't change anybody's heart. You can be like, hey, I think you'll really like this if you buy in, if you just try to buy in. But,
They're not into it. They're not into it.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it, bud. I'm sorry.
I had a player that like wasn't that like they weren't interacting, doing anything like an entire session, like 2 sessions in a row. And I just asked them, like, are you into it? Like, are we, like, do you want to play the game, continue playing? And yeah, just some people just don't get into it. They don't buy
It's
in.
fine.
Can't force them. Yeah, exactly.
That's not a bad thing. And like I think that's a fair thing to ask. Like, hey, is this your thing? You're not into it? That's cool. Like you can step away. Like it was weird. I was DMing for my brother-in-law and my mom over Christmas, and my mom was way more into it than like my brother-in-law, who's like a couple years older than me. It's like, well, clearly, like if someone was to back out of the game, it'd be him rather than my mom, who's like nearing 70 or something.
Yeah, just talk to them. Be open with your players. You can usually, as just having a quick talk. It doesn't have to be confrontational. It's not.
Here's a follow-up question and as a DM, how do I rein in a player who's being uncooperative with the rest of the group? I think even by the terminology,
I think that's a really good question.
I think the terminology even you kind of are using there, rein in. It kind of, you can't rein in anybody who's being uncooperative with the rest of the group. You just got to be like, hey, what are you like trying to do? Because you're not really part of the party and everyone is. So we got to figure that out. I don't think you can like punish the player in game to play nice. I think you just got to talk to the dude and be like, what do you imagine like the end game for your character is? Because right now you're antagonizing the rest of the group. We got to
ignore any DM advice that involves like punishing players with in-game.
Just fucking talk to people. Like I know
if you can pull them aside and be like, I like, that's why I had that slide up. Like you sat down to play Dungeons and Dragons, which is an adventure tabletop RPG that we all agreed to play. So then what's like, if you don't want to play, that's fine. Then like, what is stopping you from really getting in with the party? Like we've had that, Branson, we had multiple conversations, me, you, and everyone else at the Chicago table back in the day. Like we had those and it worked for the better. Like it helped everything out a lot.
Yeah, it always helps.
It does.
Trying to wrap this up by like 8:30, so I'm going to start rapid firing through some of these ones. BJ Greasley, how do you feel about forced events to propel the story? Like if you want to get players arrested, go to the dungeon. It could be cool. I'd aim it at the beginning a little bit. I wouldn't make up a reason for them to get arrested necessarily, but...
I say fucking do it. It's fun.
Yeah.
I had gotten you guys arrested. Like you tried to fight the Eladrin and he like...
Yeah.
It's way out of league, and you guys like surrendered because you're like, okay, they got our unconscious friend with
I would just...
What are we going to do?
I would just say be careful about what story you're propelling, because it still should be the players deciding what's happening.
I would say do it. Yeah.
Snail Shaman, what house rules do you use or have used in the past? I mean, we change flanking a lot depending on what we like, but other than that, the only house rule we do is the dick size roll.
Oh, no, that's not true. Again, death saving throw.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
Dick size rules.
Here's a good one. What's your favorite monster?
Owlbear.
Favorite monster, shit.
Mind Flayers played out. I love Mind Flayers, but they're a bit played out. Owlbear is like the perfect D&D monster, which is like it makes no sense. No one ever designed that. It's poorly fucking written, but I fucking love it. It just has all those like, it stinks of like Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, early 60s and 70s, stupid classic rock. I love the Owlbear.
There were two monsters I really wanted to have in my campaign, and you've run into one of them. My favorite you haven't run into yet, and I'm not going to say it because it'd be like a spoiler if I say it's my favorite. But the Galeb Dur, I love that fight.
Yeah,
I love that fight.
It was a great fight. It's been a while since I came out of like a D&D combat and being like, that was fucking cool.
You're sweating. It's all about sweat.
Sweat. Beholder's my favorite. They just have so much.
Beholders kick ass.
They're funny. Stupid.
Like talk about like a perfect like D&D monster. Like that is like the quintessential D&D monster.
All right, Fabulous Johnson asked, when you TPK'd the Chapo guys, you kept reading that one excerpt from the Wildmount book. Was there
cares?
something to that, or do you just find? I just find it funny. I think Critical Role's funny. Like people that like it is cool. I never like got it, but like the
Also,
dude
the
front
trouble thing
loads
is,
was
like,
so much fucking. Nobody's
it's
gonna
so-
memorize that shit in the World of Mount
So
book.
self-serious, and it's just
Yeah.
it's fun.
yeah,
I feel like if somebody told a joke, the rest of the table would get mad at them. It's just not my vibe. What's the biggest change you want to see when 6E eventually rolls around?
good question.
I want classes to have more backloaded power. I feel like a lot of classes are front loaded. And
I would want ability scores to be a little more balanced out. I don't want to see Dex
Dex
as
and
as much,
Charisma.
like,
Dex and
oh, I
Charisma.
love
Yeah.
Dex. Like all my characters are Dex whiz, but like I would like to see it all balanced out more. And if that means splitting it up more, where it's not 6 stats but 7 or 8 or maybe less than that, I don't know. But I would like to see it be more balanced. Like for example, there's no wisdom build or intelligence builds, like besides wizards. That sucks.
Yeah. Okay.
More DM resources. I don't really the D&D 5e DM guide. I just think like there's more tables, more like just encounter tables, things you can use, like I don't know, or tools for building your own, like details about probability, chances, things like that. Just like weird things you don't think about when you're first getting into it, but once you are in the thick of it, you want to figure out.
I'm gonna try to rapid fire through these last ones because I'm trying to get off here at 8:30. What do you think more about story-based system, like all the White Wolf stuff? Andrew was talking about running us through a game of that, but I really don't know that much about the White Wolf stuff.
Yeah, I don't know anything about them.
It's basically like Vampire the Masquerade, like that kind of
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
Like it's cool, but it's very story based. To me, that goes against the idea of like
Yeah.
tabletop RPG, where like everything is optional. But like, hey, if everyone's on board, go for it. Like that sounds fun if everyone's on board. If you know
I
it's
know
gonna be
my
story
players really enjoyed playing their vampire game, so I was like,
Yeah. then fucking go for it. If the table's down.
Sarah says, Sarah Lowe, I was doing some laundry, so I don't know if this has already been addressed, but I would love to hear what you think of the pros and cons of playing with a group of friends versus table strangers. Well,
I didn't know Oki until we played strangers like online.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Same with Matt. And
I
then
was
like
posting like stuff that I was creating in the like E1 Discord, and Branson reached out and we started playing. It's yeah. Other than that, I've usually only played with friends, but like you guys were strangers, obviously. But I mean, of course, it's a risk to do anything with a stranger. Technically,
what I would say with this, the big difference is like with friends, I don't know if you need as big of a session 0, and with strangers, have a big ass session 0. That would be the difference.
Sometimes playing with friends, like you can fucking be really annoyed with someone that you're a friend with.
Yeah, that's true.
You,
some people just want to play different.
Yeah, and sometimes it just doesn't work out even with friends. So I wouldn't feel too bad about it. It's just meshing with people, what you want out of the game.
Fired for Anime asks, how do you handle a group who want to play a base building strategy game in Phandalin when there's a huge world to explore? Like, you're not showing your character and your playstyles, just do hoo-hoo, look at how much damage I can do. Honestly, dude, if that's how they want to play it, try to figure out a compromise where you're having fun, too. Because, I mean, honestly, we're doing a base building kind of thing right now. Some people just like it.
Which I fucking love. I've wanted a base building campaign for so fucking long, and I love it. But, like, if somebody wants to do, like, the power building type of stuff, like, okay, you as a DM, like, then follow through with it. It can be fun for you too. Like, all right, you want to be a strong,
lean in, figure out how to do it.
There's so many like supplements and shit like that you can buy, or like things you couldn't even think of. Like, I think there's a Matt Colville like Strongholds whole like thing that he
it's actually pretty good.
Honestly, think of it this way: you have a whole group of players that are engaged, so you're lucky in that respect.
Exactly. Yeah. Figure out how you can keep them happy, I guess. If you're interested in playing the game.
What's up, fella? Says, where can I find other people to play with? I've tried DMing for in real life friends, and everyone loses interest. We kind of addressed that a little bit. I mean, there's not really much you can do other than be like, hey, how do you want to do this? And even like, I really want to do this. It requires like leaning in. Like, give me 4 weeks. consistent and then see how you feel. I mean, it's
If you all are interested, like I would be willing to do like a Minds of Fandelver, like a couple sessions, like on the E1 Discord or here. Like I'd be willing to do on Roll20. Like that's all I'm saying. Like
It's different. I think I think this person was interested in specifically DMing and trying to find people that are willing to buy into your game, basically. That can
go
be
on Roll20.
so,
Like
yeah, just
post
go on
yourself on
Roll20.
Roll20. Like people
There's
always
people out there
jump
that
on it.
for a DM. Yeah,
all right.
Absolutely.
they're not in. They're in demand, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. They are. DMs are definitely in demand.
Yeah. All right. Were you guys all friends from the same group before D&D, or did D&D bring you together? Me and Oki became friends through D&D.
Yeah,
We both were talking a lot on the E1 Discord about it.
Yeah,
I think I first met you in our first one shot with Branson DMing, right?
Yeah, me and Joel went to college together, so. Do you think we should put more emphasis on the dungeons or the dragons? It's definitely more on the dungeons, I feel like.
Unfortunately, but like the name is sweet, but like yeah, it has to go more dungeons. Easy.
What's your
Easy.
method? Chemical Polly says, "What's your method for coming up with characters? I try to come up with some terrible personality flaw and build a guy around that. Hey, just make them fun to play with. If you,
Dude, that's the right approach.
Yeah.
Think about the flaw. Think about the flaw.
Characters are defined by their flaws.
Yep. That's a really good approach. So you're already doing the right thing.
And just
and then like after that, think about what's fun. What's fun for the group.
Yeah.
Think about what you're playing with.
I haven't done this, but I've always wanted to have. I've had like neutral good guys and optimistic guys and guys that try to keep the party together. I've always wanted to play a fucking stick in the mud.
You haven't.
Yes, I have, dude. I had a Circles of Spores variant human build that I wanted to do, and I almost did it for Oki's campaign.
No, you wouldn't do that.
Sabua7. Do issues often arise in a gaming group when there are strong real-life ties between some players and not others, strangers playing? I've never had that happen. I don't know. I
played with a married couple and just...
I tried to get Alana...
I would say like
friends, so...
For this stream, I was like, hey, Alana, do you want to, like, make a character while we, like, talk about the character stuff? And she just goes, I will never take it seriously. So I don't know about playing with stuff...
I've played a lot with my drummer in my band, and there's been like obvious like butting of heads there because like we also make music together.
And you guys you're spending so much time together.
Yeah. So like that does happen. If you can separate that stuff, cool. But like be aware that it might bubble up.
Just not. I mean, most social interactions are going to be involved with people that already have social interactions with each other. So.
Better yet, just make those two characters work together from the get-go, and then everything is solved.
There you go. Yeah.
All right. How much do you guys homebrew setting stuff? I like it now, but I wish I would have done a module at the beginning. I'm kind of stuck trying to make my own thing and being overwhelmed. I'm not sure. I've never really had that problem. I just if you want inspiration, watch a bunch of TV and movies. I always just come up with something I want to do.
I got into DMing because I wanted to make my own setting and world and my own campaign, like just homebrew it myself because it was just the first goal that I had. And now that I did that, I want to go back to just doing like module stuff. That's what I'm
going to say
right now.
That
modules.
I think all three of us started with homebrews, and honestly, from my perspective, I would say do a module first.
I would do a module first.
If you're already like creating your own setting, then go to modules and steal from them. Take everything from modules that you possibly can. Because here's the thing is like, yeah, you might have a great world, and I'm sure you do. It's cool. Like we all had great worlds created. But like the modules are play tested and kind of well balanced and really well fleshed out. And at a certain point, you will be like, I'm out of ideas. I'm a little bit beyond myself. So like, yeah, steal from everything. Steal from the modules. The modules are actually really good. And people talk shit on them. They're very, very good.
All right, last question. Then I'm hopping off. Fabulous Johnson asks, what are you guys' opinions on magic and how should it work within a world? Like magic is well known and very academic, or is magic some strange energy only weirdos can study? This one is an insanely good question. It's something I struggle with every time because the first thing I do when I'm coming up with the setting is I like build it from the top down, right? But it's never really explained well where like bards get their magic. So like
That's why I hate bards
I
so
don't I'm trying to get off, so I'm not going to get super into it. But what I'm doing now is basically I think of like the weave, the arcane magic is like a matrix that permeates all worlds. I think of primordial magic as like druid magic that comes from the actual land and life and elements itself. And then you have celestial magic, which is given from an outer plane. I think if you have those vague ideas of how it works, then you can kind of make it work. And bards in my world kind of borrow magic from every little place and are able to weave it into like some weird hybrid. That's how I have it set up in my head. It's not perfect, but honestly, bards are an annoying thing to figure out on that way.
Okay, you want to take the next one?
Yeah, I just like magic as I want magic weird and strange and chaotic and no one quite understands, and every type of spellcaster has their own way of kind of dealing with it. I think a lot of like traditional D&D worlds, like it's magic is just very well understood. It's almost like a science, like with everybody involved, and that's a way to do it, totally. But it's just not my particular way.
I'll give you the lamest answer, which is depends on your campaign and your setting and your world.
Yeah,
right? That's the lame and honest answer. Is like, do you want to do a low magic setting? Then do it. Just let your players know. I think that it's cool to let people do what they want to do as players and then develop it around that personally, kind of like a really hardcore session zero. But you know what? If you want to come up with your own idea, like Branson has a very specific idea about how the weave works, and I think that's cool. I'll lean into that for sure. But there's other campaigns that could be like, oh, magic is very, very, very low level. So yeah, make it up in your own world. It's an unsatisfying answer, but like that's what I think.
All right. Well, I'm gonna wrap it up then. So thanks everybody for tuning in. So hopefully it wasn't too boring.
Thank you, Branson. Go to the thank you.
What?
Hit next on the.
Oh, okay.
All these sexy little characters.
Wait. Oh.
There
nice.
you go.
Oh wow! Look at you. This is all Joel's doing. Okay.
Yeah. That's I did. Yeah.
All right. Next week, I think we're skipping because it's the day after the 4th of July, and me and
I think
Andrew.
It's called the 4th of July, but that's just.
We're heading to Chicago to do a bunch of E1 stuff, so we're taking off that week. But I think we should be back in the saddle the week after. So thanks, Oki and Joel, for sticking around. And thanks, everyone, for listening. If we didn't get to your questions, sorry. It ran a little bit over of what I was planning.
Then just send to the Discord and we can maybe answer them.
Yeah, and Oki, did you post the Discord link?
I did.
Someone.
All right, cool. All right, well, I'm hopping off. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Everybody have a good one, and fuck you, I don't know. See ya.
Bye, y'all.
Smell you
Thank
later.
You.